Chapter 759. Lust City's triennial fence meet had begun. In the beginning, the so-called fence meet had indeed used wooden fences to surround the competition grounds. This was also the origin of the fence meet's name. However, with the passage of time, many cities had appeared in the originally barbaric Eastern Holy Land. The fence meet had long since lost its wooden fences, and the competition grounds were specially built. If Yu Qianqiu were to see it, he would definitely discover that the competition grounds were very similar to the ancient Roman Colosseum. Although the locals in the city usually held the natives in disdain, they were still very interested in the fence meet. That kind of bloody and barbaric scene could thoroughly arouse the passion of these city dwellers. Therefore, every time the fence meet was held, it was usually very difficult to obtain a ticket, and not everyone could enter to watch the competition. In the competition grounds, there were 20 warriors from various tribes divided into 10 groups, fiercely confronting each other. Within the 10 partitioned boxes, 2 of them had already finished their matches in advance. The victors waved their strong arms and roared excitedly as they left the arena, their bodies covered in blood. The losers, on the other hand, were already lying motionless on the ground, no longer breathing. As soon as the onlookers saw the blood, their passion was immediately ignited, and they cheered loudly at the victors who left the arena. No one cared whether the wounded who were dragged away were dead or alive. Next to the arena stood a tall tower, which could also be considered a landmark of Lust City. In a small room at the top of the tower, Lust City's city lord Huang Tian and Immortal City's emissary Yu Feng were indifferently watching the fights below through the window. The cheers from below could be heard clearly from above. The first round of matches in the arena below had already ended, and the people for the next round were currently entering the arena. Huang Tian stared down below and indifferently asked, "Brother Yu Feng, I heard that someone turned the Great Lord's mansion upside down and killed many people. Has the person who caused the trouble been caught?" Yu Feng's expression became solemn, and he said in a deep voice, "That person is very likely a cultivator from the outside world, but he's very strong." "Very strong?" Huang Tian smiled faintly and said, "Since we suspect it's a cultivator from the human world, how strong can a cultivator from the human world be?" Yu Feng shook his head and muttered to himself, "No one knows the exact origins of this person, but there's no need to doubt his valiant methods. Let's not talk about the trouble he caused in the Great Lord's mansion. He charged into the Immortal City twice, but no one was able to stop him. You can imagine his methods." Huang Tian's body trembled when he heard this. He turned around and cried out involuntarily, "What did you say?" There were as many experts in the Immortal City as there were clouds in the sky. He had barged in twice, but no one could make him stay? How was this possible? Could it be that the 2 immortal monarchs were not present at that time? Yu Feng gazed into the distance through the window with a lingering fear in his eyes. He sighed and said, "It's like a tiger entering a flock of sheep." The first time he barged into the Immortal City, he killed over 100 immortal cultivators. Among them, there were 3 early-stage immortal emperors and the rest were mostly grand immortals. In the end, it was immortal monarch Night Owl who managed to severely injure him, but he managed to escape. What? Immortal monarch Night Owl didn't manage to stop him? Huang Tian cried out again. There was no doubt about the abilities of the 12 immortal monarchs in the immortal world. They were some of the top figures in the immortal world and were only second to immortal Emperor Jin Tai. Huang Tian was suddenly pulled back to reality by the passionate cheers in the arena. He asked impatiently again, "Didn't he barge into the Immortal City twice? Did he still dare to barge into the Immortal City after being severely injured by the immortal monarch? That person is a monster. He recovered from such heavy injuries in just a few days." Yu Feng shook his head and smiled bitterly. Just when immortal monarch Night Owl was making arrangements to capture him, he actually came to us. The second time he barged into the Immortal City, his cultivation seemed to have increased by quite a bit. He managed to enter and exit from the encirclement of over 1,000 people and killed over 300 immortal cultivators, including 8 early-stage immortal emperors. How terrifying! Huang Tian was dumbfounded by these words and asked tongue-tied, Kill so many people. Did Immortal Monarch let him go? He had actually guessed it in his heart. With Immortal Monarch Night Owl's vengeful personality, how could he allow that person to escape again? Perhaps even Immortal Monarch Night Owl couldn't stop him. It's not that he was let go, but that he couldn't. Yufeng revealed a frightened expression as he recalled. Towards the end, no one dared to make a move against him anymore. Wherever he went, the people there would all flee. In the end, Immortal Monarch Night Owl had a one-on-one duel with him. What was the result? Huang Tian asked. Yufeng looked around warily, hesitating as if there were some things that he couldn't say. Huang Tian immediately guessed that the latter part of his words might be disrespectful to Immortal Monarch Night Owl. He couldn't say it out loud, so he transmitted his voice. Brother Yufeng, don't worry. You and I will communicate through voice transmission. No one else will know what you said today. Yufeng nodded slightly and transmitted his voice with mixed feelings. In that battle, Immortal Monarch Night Owl was no match for him. The last time that person barged into the Immortal City, he was severely injured by Immortal Monarch Night Owl's treasure, the 1,000 feather wings. This time, Immortal Monarch Night Owl's treasure, the 1,000 feather wings, was completely destroyed by that person, and Immortal Monarch Night Owl was injured quite badly. Huang Tian was immediately shocked. As someone from the immortal world, of course he knew about Immortal Monarch Night Owl's treasure, the 1,000 feather wings. It was a top-grade treasure that could attack and defend in the immortal world. What shocked him the most was that Immortal Monarch Night Owl was injured. Yufeng continued to transmit his voice with mixed feelings. At this critical moment, Western Palace Jiwu Immortal Monarch, who rarely shows herself, appeared. The two immortal monarchs joined forces to fight that person. That battle could be said to be earth-shattering. Ever since the battle against the 1,000 Swords Demon Monarch, it has been many years since there was a huge battle. Almost half of the huge immortal city is in ruins. Even if an ordinary person wanted to help, they wouldn't be able to. Two immortal monarchs joined forces and they let him escape? Huang Tian's face was full of disbelief. Yufeng shook his head slightly and said, he did escape, but with two immortal monarchs working together, it's not that easy. In addition, Immortal Monarch Night Owl was fighting with all his might. That person ran with injuries. Otherwise, with that person's ruthlessness, he wouldn't have retreated unless he had no other choice. Huang Tian narrowed his eyes and said, that's strange. Since he was no match for two immortal monarchs working together, why didn't they chase him? The entire continent is like a cage, and he was seriously injured. Where could he run to? Immortal Monarch Night Owl doesn't seem like someone who nurtures a tiger. You won't believe me even if I tell you. Yufeng's eyes were burning with passion as he lowered his voice and said, that person could actually enter and exit the heaven and earth formation at will. The two immortal monarchs were determined not to let him go, and they chased him all the way to the sky. Who knew that they would be stopped by the heaven and earth formation, and that person could directly pass through it, leaving them in the dust. That smell is very similar to the 1,000 Swords Demon Monarch back then. What? Huang Tian was dumbfounded. He can enter and exit the heaven and earth formation at will? How is that possible? He immediately thought of Yu Qianqiu, who was still trapped underground, and he already suspected if there was any connection between the two. Yufeng sneered and said, actually, in terms of cultivation, I'm afraid that person is no match for any immortal monarch. However, not only is his cultivation high, but he also seems to be able to borrow the power of heaven and earth. After he escaped from the heaven and earth great array, everyone understood that since the heaven and earth great array couldn't restrain him, he could fight to his heart's content and didn't have to worry about the array taking away half of his immortal essence. Think about it, Immortal Monarch Night Owl consumes 20% of his celestial core power to unleash 10% of his power, but he can unleash 100% of his power with 100% of his power. How can Immortal Monarch Night Owl not be at a disadvantage when they fight? Hearing this, Huang Tian nodded vaguely. Seemed like he agreed, but in fact he didn't agree. How could accounts be calculated like this? Although it was a little disadvantageous and would affect the endurance of the fight, when it came to fighting, one could still unleash as much power as one had. It was just that the consumption of celestial core power would be doubled. Moreover, didn't the two immortal monarchs join forces in the end? Although he thought so, Yufeng seemed to be protecting the immortal monarch's face, so he couldn't say too much. After a moment of silence, he asked, "Why did this person barge into the celestial city? Is there something in the celestial city that he wants?" Hearing this, Yufeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "What does he want? He doesn't want anything. That person is a complete madman." The first time he came to the celestial city, he called out two immortal monarchs to fight him. Of course, the people below wouldn't be polite and immediately attacked. The second time he came again. With the previous lesson, everyone could see that this person wasn't ordinary. Naturally, they weren't in a hurry to attack, because they couldn't keep fighting with him for no reason. They had to know the reason for the fight. So this time, someone asked him why he came to challenge the immortal monarchs and what his intentions were. Guess what his answer was? Huang Tian was stunned and asked, "How did he answer?" That madman said he came to fight, to lose, until he met an opponent that he couldn't surpass and died in battle. This was his lifelong wish, and he had no other wish. Yufeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Do you think this person is a madman?" After so long, he didn't have any intentions. He just came to the celestial city to fight the immortal monarchs. Say, everyone has been idle for so many years. Don't those people who were beaten to death for no reason feel wronged? Huang Tian was speechless. For someone like this who was purely seeking death for the sake of fighting, it wasn't wrong to say that he was a madman. Huang Tian was stunned and asked weakly, "This time he escaped again. Will he come a third time?" "Come," Yufeng said unhappily. Before he escaped, he laughed loudly and said that it was satisfying, saying that this trip was not in vain. He even said to the two immortal monarchs that he would come again after he recovered. When the two immortal monarchs heard that he was going to come again, they felt a headache coming. For a madman like this who became stronger and stronger the more he fought, who was not afraid of fighting, who could bear to fight with him, Immortal Monarch Night Owl has already gone to the underground world to contact the two netherworld generals. Chapter 760. Contact the two netherworld generals? Huang Tian was surprised. The two netherworld generals have not come out for a long time, and there has always been a barrier between them and the people of the immortal world. Can the immortal lord pull them out? Maybe not usually. Yu Feng's eyes were burning. But don't forget, that madman can enter and exit the heaven and earth formation at will. As long as we capture that madman, we can unravel the secret of entering and exiting the formation. Do you think the two netherworld generals can resist such a huge temptation? If that madman dares to come again, the two immortal lords and the two netherworld generals can work together and subdue him. That's true. Huang Tian, who was nodding slightly, suddenly raised his eyebrows. His eyes flickered and he smiled. "Brother Yufeng, please wait a moment. I just remembered something. I'll be back soon." Yufeng raised his hand and smiled. "City Lord Huang is too polite. Please go ahead." Huang Tian cupped his hands and disappeared from the room in the tower. After returning to the City Lord Manor, Huang Tian casually walked towards a secluded corner of the garden. As he walked, his entire body suddenly sank into the ground. Inside the underground palace, Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting in front of a table with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. He stared at the walls of the underground palace in front of him. There was a ripple, and Huang Tian strolled out, giving off the feeling of an immortal passing through walls. "What? You finally thought it through?" Huang Tian walked over with a smile, revealing an expression that said, "At least you're sensible." Yu Qianqiu sized him up, then leaned back on the chair and supported his chin with his hand. He said in a low voice, "I've thought it through. I can't leave this continent sealed by the heaven and earth formation alone. So I need your help. In other words, I need to work with you." Huang Tian's smile froze, and he frowned. "Why don't I understand what you mean?" "It's very simple." Yu Qianqiu stood up and sighed. "Believe it or not, I'll tell you the truth. I've been researching the mysteries of the heaven and earth, heaven, earth, heaven, earth, heaven, earth formation. I spent a lot of time and finally found a way to come in. However, if I want to leave, I'll need to spend more time researching. However, I'm very confident in my attainments in formations. Since I can come in, I can definitely get out. As long as we find the eye of the formation, getting out will be a piece of cake. Do you think I'll believe your nonsense? Huang Tian sneered and said, Actually, it's very simple for me to let you go. There's no need to spout nonsense. You just need to tell me how to leave. I promise I won't kill you. He had already thought it through. As long as he could get his hands on the method to leave, he could promise not to kill him. However, not killing him didn't mean that he couldn't cripple him. Damn it, trying to play this game with me. Yu Qianqiu raised an eyebrow, his face full of mockery as he said, City Lord Huang, I think you're mistaken about one thing. If I really wanted to leave this place, I don't need your permission to let me go. Your mere underground palace can't trap me. The reason why I haven't left until today is that I've used these few days to think things through, and I feel that cooperating with you is the best choice. Oh, Huang Tian revealed a face full of mockery and said, Then I'd like to see how you can leave this place if I don't let you go. If you really have the ability to leave this underground palace, I'll agree to cooperate with you. He didn't believe that Yu Qianqiu would obediently stay here if he could leave this place. It seems that if I don't show some sincerity, City Lord Huang won't believe me at all. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. I've always been a low-profile person and don't like to be ostentatious. But, fine. Today, I'll show off a little. It'll also let City Lord Huang know my sincerity in cooperating with you. Under Huang Tian's disdainful gaze, this guy looked around and stretched out a hand, pointing at the place Huang Tian had just come out from. The earthen wall on the opposite side melted away like snow, revealing a pitch-black hole that was 2 meters wide and wide enough for a person to pass through. City Lord Huang, do you believe me now? Yu Qianqiu asked with a deadpan expression. Huang Tian was completely dumbfounded. In the end, Yu Qianqiu shook his head and muttered to himself, Not saying anything. That means you don't believe me. Fine. He stretched out his hand again, and with 2 fingers he pointed to the east, then to the west, then to the left, then to the right. In short, he randomly pointed to the front, back, left, right, up, down, and down. In the blink of an eye, the underground palace was filled with holes, and the underground palace couldn't be considered an underground palace anymore. It was completely an underground hub that connected in all directions. After finishing his work, Yu Qianqiu put his hands behind his back and asked with a face full of mockery, City Lord Huang, which hole do you think I should leave from? Huang Tian was flabbergasted. After a while he asked, So you also know how to control Earth? I've always been a low-profile person. There's no need to mention this. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand apologetically, as if it was just a small trick that wasn't worth mentioning. Huang Tian was speechless. Then, he asked with a complicated expression, How do you want to cooperate? He suddenly felt like he was fooling himself. After seeing Yu Qianqiu's methods, he completely believed in Yu Qianqiu's sincerity. Otherwise, Yu Qianqiu could really leave at any time. There was no need to wait for him. Yu Qianqiu waved his sleeve, and all the holes in the underground palace instantly closed up, returning to normal. He said solemnly, Let's work together and find the formation core. As long as we find it, I'll be able to think of a way to leave. Huang Tian looked at the underground palace that had returned to normal and said, This formation was set up by the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch. I'm afraid no one knows where the formation core is. Even if we want to find it, it's easier said than done in such a vast continent. Don't you have someone like me who's proficient in formations? Yu Qianqiu patted his chest and said, According to my experience, the heaven and earth formation is so powerful, so it needs a powerful energy to support its operation. I'm sure that the powerful energy supporting the heaven and earth formation is the formation core. As long as we find where the powerful energy is, we'll have a way to leave this place. Think about it, where can we find the powerful energy supporting the heaven and earth formation? the powerful energy supporting the heaven and earth heaven earth heaven earth formation? Huang Tian frowned and suddenly exclaimed, "Purple flames! Could the purple flames be the formation core?" Finally, the main topic. Yu Qianqiu was secretly happy when he heard that. Luckily, you're not completely clueless, or else I'll have to slowly guide you. However, he asked with an ignorant expression, "Purple flames? What's purple flames?" Huang Tian immediately explained the true Samadhi fire in detail. Yu Qianqiu listened patiently and immediately clapped his hands and cheered. "That's right. That's it. There's no doubt about it. The purple flames are the formation core. Do you have a way to find it? As long as we find it, we'll be able to leave this broken place." Huang Tian pursed his lips and nodded excitedly. Since the purple flames are the formation core, it's easy now that we have a target. We won't have to search aimlessly. Maybe we'll have to spend some time to ask around, but we'll definitely find it. After all, the purple flames aren't ordinary. The target is no small matter. As long as it's shown, someone will definitely know. I've heard people mention it before, but I didn't pay much attention to it. I didn't expect it to be the formation core. Hearing someone mention the purple flames, Yu Qianqiu's body trembled. He walked over and grabbed Huang Tian's arm. He said anxiously, "Who mentioned it? Quickly go and ask him. Don't pull and pull." Huang Tian pushed his hand away and paced around. He said sadly, "That person offended Immortal Lord Night Owl and was killed by Immortal Lord Night Owl. F***CK. Yu Qianqiu almost choked to death. What nonsense. Huang Tian saw that he wasn't faking his anxiety and nodded in his heart. It seemed that the purple flames were indeed the formation core. He comforted him, "Don't worry. I also want to leave this place as soon as possible. Don't worry. As long as the target is locked onto the heaven and earth universe formation, there will definitely be more than one person who has seen it. I'll find a way to find out about the purple flames as soon as possible." Yu Qianqiu calmed down a little and began to ponder whether he should think of a way to leak the news that he could leave the heaven and earth great Chenkuan formation. Old Huang's ability seemed to be limited. He should be able to find the purple flames faster with the help of the immortal monarchs of the eastern and western palaces. Huang Tian's heart trembled slightly when he saw Yu Qianqiu's gaze drifting about. He narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Yu Qianqiu, since you and I have agreed to cooperate, I hope no one else knows about this." His tone concealed a hint of threat. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Don't worry about this. I have quite a reputation outside and am doing very well. I don't want all the masters here to go out and join in the fun. The world can't accommodate so many great gods. City Lord Huang, on the other hand, you have to be careful when you find the purple flames. I know what I'm doing. You don't have to worry about it." Huang Tian paused and suddenly said, "Speaking of the outside, I thought of something. I don't know if you know this person. This person can actually ignore the heaven and earth Chen Kuan formation." He immediately repeated what Yu Feng had said. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He didn't need to guess to know that it must be that amazing master of his. Who else could it be other than him? This old man was as monstrous as ever. The more he played, the bigger he got. He hoped that he didn't kill himself. But then again, worrying for him was unnecessary. The old man insisted on walking the path of terror, and no one could stop him. After thinking about it, he shook his head and said, "I've never heard of such an expert in the world." Huang Tian nodded and said, "I also feel that it's impossible for there to be such an expert in the world. Maybe he's a rising star in the celestial world." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Let's not talk about him. Let's talk about me first. My native friends are still in prison. Why don't you find a reason to release them and give us a free identity?" Huang Tian nodded to indicate that he would arrange it. Yu Qianqiu looked around and said, "You should keep this underground palace. If there's anything, we'll meet here. Let's just say it like this. I'll go to prison first. Quickly release us. I'm leaving." After saying that, he dashed into the mud wall and disappeared. Huang Tian's face twitched. This underground palace really couldn't trap him. Chapter 761. In the dungeon, As soon as Yu Qianqiu appeared, Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately transmitted his voice to him. Did you find Huang Tian? Yu Qianqiu did not disturb the others. He quietly lay down beside him and replied with a voice transmission. It's done. We will be able to leave in no time. You killed his men. He didn't make things difficult for you? Immortal Lord Crocodile asked curiously. You're worrying too much. There's nothing I can't handle. This is what it means to be capable. Yu Qianqiu lay down on a pile of straw and crossed his legs. The two of them chatted casually. Sure enough, after waiting for a while, the sound of the metal door opening came from outside. The footsteps were getting closer and closer. After the door of the cell was opened, under the dim light, someone shouted at the door, "All of you, come out!" Boli and the others hurriedly stood up and walked out. The guard scolded them a few times and led them outside. Once out of the dungeon, Boli and the others felt that the sunlight was blinding because they had stayed in the dark for too long. In the courtyard outside the dungeon stood a few soldiers in bright armor. They were obviously of a higher grade than the guards here. A man with a dignified aura slowly sized them up. After that, he asked in a deep voice, "Who is Yu Qianqiu?" "I am." Yu Qianqiu, who was the smallest among them, stood out. The man looked at him meaningfully and said in a relaxed tone, "You can go out, but you have been stripped of your right to participate in the fence gathering. Without permission, you cannot leave Lust City." Boli and the others looked at each other and kept quiet. They were obviously a little afraid. To them, the city guards were people they had to look up to. Yu Qianqiu frowned. This must be Huang Tian's order. He did not know what the old man meant. Was there any meaning in doing this? Immortal Lord Crocodile said impatiently, "Can we go now?" With his pride, if it was not to cooperate with Yu Qianqiu, he would not stay in a place like this to be scolded. The man didn't get angry and nodded without changing his expression. Immortal Crocodile was the first to leave. Yu Qianqiu smiled and waved at Boli and the rest. Let's go, let's go. It's fine now." He guessed that these guys must have been living in fear for the past few days. The man with the dignified aura silently watched them leave, and his expression seemed to be deep in thought. The sacred palace of Baiwan country, which was hidden in the deep mountains and beautiful rivers, was pure white and smooth like jade. Under the illumination of the sun, it radiated a warm light. It was symmetrical with the surrounding mountain scenery, like a piece of jade embedded in the mountain. With the mountains on one side and the water on the other, it was holy and pure. The air outside was fresh and green, with birds chirping and flowers blooming everywhere. In front of the white jade railings of the temple stood Wen Lanfeng in a plain gray robe. The color of his robe reflected his mood. The pleasant scenery could not dispel the faint melancholy in his eyes. The plain gray robe, the slender figure, and the melancholy eyes stood there quietly, looking extremely lonely. He had been standing here for a long time, and no one dared to disturb him. The peerless beauty of Ling Fong Valley still lingered in his dreams. His infatuation had not wavered for countless years. On the flowering path outside, a man calmly walked over and bowed to the dazed Wen Lanfeng. "Elder ancestor." Wen Lanfeng slowly came back to his senses and smiled faintly. "It's Wen Rue. What's the matter? What's the matter?" Wen Rue smiled and reported. "It's like this. There's someone outside who wants to see you. I can't chase him away, so I'm here to ask for your permission." "Oh." Wen Lanfeng frowned slightly. "Who wants to see me?" Wen Rue muttered. "I don't know if it's true or not. He claims to be Yan Juexing, but I don't think so." "Yan Juexing?" Wen Lanfeng's eyes instantly turned sharp. He asked in a low voice, "Where is he?" Yan Juexing had taken away Lu Yanqing's disciple, Xian Laosan, which worried Lu Yanqing. How could he not care about it? "He's waiting by the heart-cleansing lake." Before Wen Rue finished his words, Wen Lanfeng had already turned into a shadow and flew away. Wen Rue immediately followed him. In the depths of the jungle, the heart-cleansing lake was as calm as a mirror, reflecting the blue sky and white clouds. From time to time, various kinds of birds flew by. There were pavilions built by the lake, which were the residences for receiving guests. Mist curled up from the lake, setting off the scenery here like a fairyland on earth. A black-robed man stood by the lake. His silky black hair was draped over his shoulders, covering half of his face. He was expressionless as he watched the fish swimming leisurely in the lake. No one knew what he was thinking. Two figures landed behind him, one in front and one behind. He continued to stare at the lake silently. When Lan Feng was slightly startled when he saw the black-robed man. He had seen Yan Juexing before. At that time, Yan Juexing's cultivation was only at the early stage of crossing calamity. But this man's cultivation was clearly at the early stage of soul formation. When Lan Feng stared at the back of the black-robed man and said in a low voice, "Who are you? Why did you pretend to be Yan Juexing and trick me to come out to meet you? Do you think I have a good temper? How would I dare to lie to you, Senior One? I'm afraid you're forgetful." The unmoving black-robed man finally turned around slowly. His long black hair fluttered even though there was no wind. It was Yan Juexing's true appearance. "You!" When Lan Feng was shocked. He had seen Yan Juexing before. This man's appearance was indeed Yan Juexing's, but he could not be wrong about his cultivation. He quickly stared at Yan Juexing's left hand. He remembered Lu Yanqing saying that Yan Juexing's left hand had been chopped off by Yu Qianqiu, and this man's left hand was intact. Lu Yanqing would definitely not lie to him. "You're definitely not Yan Juexing. Who are you?" When Lan Feng shouted, he was really angry. Someone actually dared to trick him in front of him. No matter how good his temper was, he could not hold it in anymore. Yan Juexing slowly raised his left hand and said coldly, "Senior One must be wondering why my hand, which was chopped off by Yu Qianqiu, is still here, right? Yes, it was once chopped off by Yu Qianqiu, but it grew back. And my cultivation must be very strange to you, right? Actually, life is full of miracles. There's nothing strange about it." What he said was all the doubts in Wen Lanfeng's heart, but such an answer did not satisfy Wen Lanfeng. When Lan Feng still doubted, "Are you really Yan Juexing?" Yan Juexing shook his head slightly and said, "I thought Senior One would have a better vision. I didn't expect you to be so mediocre. I'm really disappointed. Isn't Senior One on good terms with Yu Qianqiu? You must have heard him mention that I'm cultivating demonic arts." He stared at his left hand coldly and said indifferently, "It's all thanks to the demonic arts that I can stand here today." When Lanfeng's pupils shrank. Even if the other party was really Yan Juexing, his attitude towards him was too calm. Did he think that he was a match for him just because his cultivation had reached the early stage of soul formation? When Lanfeng snorted and said, "So, you're really Yan Juexing?" Yan Juexing put down his left hand and nodded slightly. "Yes. Moreover, impersonating Yan Juexing won't do me any good. It will even make Senior One unhappy. Why would I do that?" After confirming Yan Juexing's identity, when Lan Feng ignored the miracle that happened to him because he did not feel that it had anything to do with him, he immediately shouted, "Where's Third Xian? Third Xian?" Yan Juexing said indifferently, "It seems that the rumor in the cultivation world is true. Senior One has long fallen for the world's most beautiful woman. If there's a chance, I'd like to see how beautiful the so-called world's most beautiful woman is to be able to make Senior One fall in love with her. I'll ask you for the last time. Where's Third Xian?" When Lanfeng's eyes turned cold and his body exuded a faint killing intent, Yan Juexing shook his head slightly and said without fear, "Senior One, please answer my question first. If I'm satisfied, I'm willing to return Third Xian to Senior Lu. Otherwise, don't even think about knowing where Third Xian is even if you kill me." When Lan Feng clenched his fists and said in a deep voice, "Speak! Senior One and Yu Qianqiu's relationship is not ordinary. I believe Senior One must know where Yu Qianqiu is." Yan Juexing's black robe and long hair suddenly fluttered without any wind. He asked word by word, "I want to know where Yu Qianqiu is." When Lan Feng was slightly stunned. It was obvious that Yan Juexing wanted to find Yu Qianqiu for revenge. With Yan Juexing's current cultivation, he was afraid that Yu Qianqiu would have a hard time. Moreover, it was impossible for him to tell Yan Juexing that Yu Chencho was Niu Yud. He paused and said, "Hand over third exan and I can let you go today." Yan Juexing's eyes lit up and he sneered. "It seems that Senior Wen knows where Yu Chencho is. You just don't want to say it. If that's the case, I won't force you. I believe I can find other people who know. Goodbye." Just when he was about to turn around, he heard Wen Lanfeng shout, "Stop! Do you think you can leave today?" "Oh?" Yan Juexing stopped and shook his head. "That's not necessarily true. You don't have the ability, but you have the guts. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Today, I will let you know what is certain." Just when Wen Lanfeng was about to make a move, he suddenly felt a slight movement behind him. He thought that Wen Rui was going to attack on his behalf. Unexpectedly, he felt a chill in his chest. An ice-cold sword had already pierced through his chest. Wen Lanfeng stretched out 2 fingers at lightning speed to clamp the sword's edge to prevent it from moving and causing him more serious injuries. He suddenly looked back and saw that the person who sneak attacked him was none other than Wen Rui, who was standing behind him. He was desperately urging the sword in his hand to kill him. At this moment, Wen Lanfeng's mood was no less than being struck by lightning. He only felt cold all over and roared, "Wen Rui, you bastard!" The difference in their cultivation was too big. Wen Lanfeng's impressive cultivation was not child's play. When Wen Rui saw that his sword was caught between Wen Lanfeng's 2 fingers, and he was unable to move it even after exerting all his cultivation, he was immediately shocked. He immediately abandoned his sword and flashed over, swinging his palm towards the top of Wen Lanfeng's head. Looking at this move, it was obvious that he wanted to kill Wen Lanfeng in one blow. Chapter 762. Wen Lanfeng had never dreamed of such a day. Since he stepped into the cultivation world, he had been prepared to die a horrible death. However, he had never thought that the Wen family wanted to kill him. Especially Wen Rui, who had no chance to step into the soul formation stage without his strong support. Otherwise, Wen Rui would not be able to hurt him even if he had a little bit of defense. How could he vent his anger? Wen Lanfeng's face was full of grief and indignation. With 2 fingers, he broke the sword that had pierced through his chest. He swung his arm, and a cold glare shot out. It carried the force of thunder, and it was as fast as lightning. It was even faster than the person who attacked him, and with a bang, it struck Wen Rui's chest, causing a splash of blood. Puff! Wen Rui spat out a mouthful of blood. The momentum of the broken sword was like a heavy hammer hitting his chest. When the cold light pierced through his chest, he was shocked and flew out by a huge force. Yan Juexing turned into a shadow and rushed over almost at the same time as Wen Lanfeng's attack. Wen Lanfeng's murderous aura suddenly appeared like a whirlwind. He stared at Wen Rui, who was sent flying, and slapped the exposed half of the broken sword on his chest without turning his head. The flowing light shot out from his back with a spurting blood sword. The sound of wind and thunder rose again and violently shot toward Yan Juexing. The sharp aura of the broken blade arrived in an instant, like a frosty blade sweeping over. Yan Juexing was shocked. Wen Lanfeng was indeed Wen Lanfeng. His cultivation was much higher than Bing Qingzi's. He was a little overconfident and overestimated himself. Just the power of the broken sword alone was not something he could withstand. In a flash of thought, Yan Juexing's afterimage split into 3 phantasms like black smoke. The broken blade passed through the 3 phantasms almost at the moment when the 3 phantasms separated. It hit the heart-cleansing lake and made a huge splash. Yan Juexing was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Even though he had escaped this fatal blow, the sprayed blood was like a rainstorm and instantly covered the 3 wisps of black smoke that could not escape in time. The crackling sounds were like beans being fried, causing the 3 wisps of black smoke to tremble like curtains. They were forcefully separated into 3 arcs that converged into a shape in the air. Yan Juexing looked a little embarrassed when he reappeared. His black robe was full of small holes and a few strands of black hair were scattered on the lake. This was just the appearance. His skin under the black robe was painful and numb as if being pricked by thousands of needles. If his demonic body was not strong, he would have been beaten into a sieve. Yan Zhuixing clenched his fists in the air and the bones all over his body cracked. Black evil spirit instantly gushed out from his body and lingered around him. Yan Zhuixing, with his long hair fluttering in the wind, slowly raised his head. His cold gaze shifted from his own body to Wen Lanfeng. He said indifferently, "Senior One is indeed worthy of your reputation." This was not a compliment. Yan Zhuixing thought that when Rui's sneak attack first, and he would succeed with his demonic skills. But who knew that Wen Lanfeng was as immovable as a mountain? With just a raise of his hand, he immediately forced the two into an embarrassing situation. One of them was seriously injured, when Rui was still struggling in the ruins of the wooden building that he had crashed into. However, he seemed to be injured too badly. He shook his dizzy head and could not stand up for a long time. Wen Lanfeng stared at him with a sorrowful expression on his face. He allowed the blood to flow from his chest and back. The blood that flowed out formed strange patterns on his gray robe, giving the illusion that his robe had been torn apart. No matter how much blood flowed, it could not drain the sorrow in his heart. He really could not think of any way that he had wronged Wen Rui. Wen Lanfeng pointed a finger at his chest and channeled his strength through his meridians, immediately stopping the bleeding on his chest and back. His long but somewhat bleak body suddenly turned around and stared at Yan Zhuixing angrily. "Ignorant junior, don't even think of leaving today. Leave your life here." Yan Zhuixing was waiting for him to turn around and look at him. He immediately grasped the opportunity and shouted in a deep voice, "Look at my demon eye!" His eyes suddenly glowed with a demonic red light and directly looked at Wen Lanfeng's stare. Wen Lanfeng's expression slightly stiffened. But in the blink of an eye, his eyes suddenly glowed and he shouted angrily, "Crooked Wei, how dare you act wildly in front of me? Today I must eliminate you, you scourge." His loud and clear voice was deafening, surging layer by layer. Yan Zhuixing showed a pained expression. The demonic red light in his eyes suddenly disappeared. With a flick of his long hair, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Wen Lanfeng's cultivation was profound and his primordial spirit was as strong as steel. It was not someone that Yan Zhuixing could cross levels to capture. As a result, he suffered a backlash and injured himself. In fact, the demonic book had long warned that when facing an opponent with a certain level of cultivation, one should not use demon eye ecstasy lightly. Otherwise, one could easily suffer a backlash. Within a certain level of cultivation, it could be used to cross levels because the primordial spirits in this level were relatively light and easy to capture. After this level, as the opponent's primordial spirit had stabilized, it could at most be used on people of the same level. The higher the level, the more stable the primordial spirit was, and the harder it was to control. In the end, one could only control people with a lower level of cultivation. If one encountered a cultivator with attainments in the primordial spirit, one had to be extra careful even if their cultivation was lower. Otherwise, one might be controlled by the other party. This was the fatal weakness of demon eye ecstasy. But then again, if one could control it regardless of the level of cultivation, the world would have long been the world of demonic cultivators. It was not that Yan Zhuixing did not know this, but because of the improvement of his cultivation and the fact that he had injured Bing Qingzi with a punch, he was indeed a little overconfident. As a result, he suffered a loss in the hands of Wen Lanfeng. As the saying goes, there must be a gain for every loss. After suffering a loss, he would remember the lesson. At this moment, a silver light suddenly flashed out from the storage bag on Wen Lanfeng's waist. The sword moved along with his finger. Wen Lanfeng waved his arm and pointed. The giant silver sword did not stop at all. With the momentum of a thunderbolt, it stirred up layers of almost substantial air waves and burst out. In this blow, Wen Lanfeng did not hold back any strength. He wanted to kill Yan Zhuixing. The monstrous momentum rushed like a cannon. The silver light in the middle shocked Yan Zhuixing, who was shaken. He immediately teleported to avoid it without thinking. However, just when he appeared hundreds of meters away, he could immediately hear the roar that broke through the air. Yan Zhuixing slightly tilted his head and was immediately scared out of his wits. The giant silver sword almost followed him at the same time. It was frighteningly fast, and he immediately teleported to avoid it, when Lan Feng stood by the lake in a blood-stained gray robe. His eyes followed Yan Juexing, who was dodging. He was completely determined to kill Yan Juexing. How could he easily escape? The lake water beside the heart-cleansing lake suddenly rippled and was pushed away layer by layer. Each wave was higher than the previous one. Just when Lanfeng's momentum soared and he wanted to fly to the sky to deal with Yan Juexing, there was a flapping sound in the ruins of the wooden building behind him. When Lan Feng suddenly turned back, he saw Wen Rui's eyes were about to crack. He coughed out mouthfuls of blood and seemed to be madly rushing over. "Bastard!" When Lan Feng shouted angrily, he was immediately furious. He raised his palm with surging momentum wrapped in murderous intent. With Wen Rui's current weak body, he would probably immediately lose his life if he were to use this palm. However, when Wen Lanfeng's eyes met Wen Rui's unprecedented tyrannical eyes, he immediately remembered the moment when Yan Juexing wanted to control him with the magic eye. He instantly understood why Wen Rui's sneak attacked him. He dodged sideways to avoid Wen Rui, who was knocked down, and pointed 2 fingers on Wen Rui's back. The finger strength easily penetrated Wen Rui's meridians, and Wen Rui immediately collapsed to the ground. At this moment, there was a sharp whistling sound in the air. When Lan Feng suddenly looked over and saw a flowing light get rid of the giant silver sword at an incredible speed. "Want to run?" When Lan Feng snorted coldly, he had disappeared. He teleported 3 times in the air and instantly caught up with Yan Juexing. He waved his fist and directly punched. "Leave your life here." The strong wind blew wildly in the air with astonishing momentum. Yan Juexing looked back and was immediately scared out of his wits. When Lan Feng had already swung his fist in front of him with a face full of anger. At this time, Yan Juexing had no choice but to fight. He used all his cultivation and shouted, "Magic fist!" Boom! There was a loud sound in the air, and the airwave collapsed. Yan Juexing made a puff sound and spat out another mouthful of blood. He was directly thrown far away by the powerful impact. However, he could not care about anything at this time. The only priority was to escape. With the help of the powerful impact, he took advantage of the magic light glimpse movement technique to the extreme and fled into the sky like a flowing light. He looked back from time to time, afraid that when Lan Feng would catch up again. When Lan Feng stopped in the air and watched Yan Juexing escape, his eyes were filled with disbelief. The penetrating and explosive force contained in Yan Juexing's punch was so strong that when Lan Feng could not believe that the punch was made by Yan Juexing. In fact, at this time, it was not that he did not want to chase Yan Juexing again, but the true vitality in his body was extremely chaotic. He had a faint feeling that he could not condense it. It seemed that the power of Yan Juexing's punch was still reverberating in his body. At this time, the penetrating wound on his chest and back was gurgling blood again. Unfortunately, Yan Juexing, who was busy running for his life, did not see this scene. Otherwise, he should be able to more or less see that when Lan Feng had almost lost the ability to fight at this time. If he could take the opportunity while he had not recovered, he would definitely be able to avenge the hatred of Lingfang Valley. After a long time, when Lan Feng, who stopped in the air, finally recovered, he pointed a finger at his chest and the bleeding on his chest and back was stopped again. At this time, when Lanfeng's face was a little pale, which was related to the excessive blood loss. However, with his cultivation, it was not fatal. Staring at the direction where Yan Juexing disappeared, when Lan Feng shook his head slightly and sighed. He knew that he had missed the opportunity and it was useless to chase. As soon as he turned around, he saw a group of Wen family disciples flying over. Chapter 763. In the boundless mountains, a shadow suddenly fell from the sky. Yan Juexing, who was fleeing in panic, quickly dodged through the dense forest. He found a hidden cave in a sorry state and directly entered it. Who knew that there were 2 big gray wolves, one male and one female, lying inside. The 2 wolves were shocked, and before they could do anything, Yan Juexing punched them into a bloody mess without hesitation. He then turned around and hid in the cave covered by grass and trees, carefully watching the surroundings. He was still in the territory of Baiwan country, but he really did not dare to run anymore. Once when Lanfeng caught up with him in terms of speed, he was frightened by the scene of when Lanfeng chasing him. In addition, the demonic aura in his body was almost exhausted. He could not run far even if he wanted to, so he had to find a hidden place to hide. After confirming that no one was chasing him, Yan Juexing's nervousness was somewhat relieved. He looked around the barren mountains. What a familiar scene. What a déjà vu. Yan Juexing sat on the ground, helplessness and desolation surging on his face. He was fleeing in panic in the barren mountains again. This was not the first or second time. Was this his fate? Yan Juexing inserted his hands into the soil. He did not expect Wen Lanfeng to be so strong. After being successfully attacked by Wen Rue, he did not even have a chance to get close to Wen Lanfeng. Based on his current cultivation, the demonic skill he cultivated could only exert its power in close combat. But even if he could get close to Wen Lanfeng, the demonic fist that he exerted with all his strength still could not hurt Wen Lanfeng. Instead, he was injured again. He did not expect that Bing Chengzi's cultivation was so different from Wen Lanfeng's. He could hurt Bing Chengzi with 60% of his strength, but he could not hurt Wen Lanfeng with 100% of his strength. Yan Juexing was speechless, regretting that he did not listen to Bing Chengzi's words and only came out after mastering the demonic skill. He did not think that Bing Chengzi did not expect that Yan Juexing would hurt him at all. Moreover, Yan Juexing was purely resisting and did not fight back at all. If Bing Chengzi really wanted to kill Yan Juexing would not be any better. After all, an expert at the late stage of soul transformation was not to be trifled with. No! Yan Juexing jumped up with a swoosh. His movement was too violent and affected his internal injuries. He immediately bent over and pressed his chest, choking a mouthful of blood. After he slowly straightened his body, his face was filled with anger and unwillingness. As he gritted his teeth, he was actually so angry that he was trembling. Now that he had calmed down, he recalled the punch that collided with Wen Lanfeng. When he was escaping, he looked back and saw that Wen Lanfeng's chest was bleeding. In other words, his punch was effective. Thinking about why Wen Lanfeng didn't chase after him, Wen Lanfeng had proven that he had the ability to kill him, so why did he stop there and watch him escape? It was obvious that Wen Lanfeng had lost the ability to chase after him. Once he figured it out, Yan Juexing immediately felt like his heart was being stabbed by a knife. He understood that he had missed the most crucial opportunity. Return now? This was impossible. With Wen Lanfeng's ability, with this period of time as a buffer, not to mention recovering from his injuries, he would at least have the ability to fight again. After fighting with him, Wen Lanfeng must have understood the power of his devil fist. If he went back to fight, it would be impossible for Wen Lanfeng to fight him in close combat. A flying sword with unparalleled power could take his life. Cough, cough. Yan Juexing coughed violently and spat out mouthfuls of blood. This was due to his anger, which aggravated his injuries. He covered his chest and looked at the blood on the ground. His gaze slowly recovered its indifference. Under the dazzling red, he gradually calmed down. His indifferent eyes stared outside the cave. Since his demonic fist had injured Wen Lanfeng, it meant that he still had a chance for revenge. Wen Lanfeng, you have so many weaknesses. It won't be too long before we meet again. Yan Juexing gritted his teeth and sat down cross-legged. He took out a panacea and began to adjust his breath to restore his body. This was the most important thing at the moment. In the sacred hall of the One Family, Wen Lanfeng's personal meditation place was empty and quiet. In the corner, Wen Rue, who was chained up, lay there quietly. Although he was unconscious, Wen Lanfeng had personally sealed his dantian, making it impossible for him to use his cultivation. His serious injuries had also been healed by Wen Lanfeng with his profound cultivation. There was a chance for him to recover slowly. Wen Lanfeng was sitting cross-legged opposite him, healing himself. A few days later, Wen Lanfeng slowly opened his eyes. Although his injuries had not healed, they were no longer a problem. He calmly looked at Wen Rue in the corner, without the slightest anger in his eyes. It was not Wen Rue's intention to sneak attack him. He was controlled by Yan Juexing. After understanding this, He could only think about how to help when Rui completely get rid of Yan Juexing's control. He got up and walked to the unconscious Wen Rui. When Lan Feng looked at the person on the ground and could not help but sigh. Yanqing, we were all wrong. Yu Qianqiu was right. He remembered the scene in the cornucopia. At that time, Yu Qianqiu was determined to kill Yan Juexing and Hu Changshou's son, Hu Yuntian. It was he who listened to Lu Yanqing and stopped him. Otherwise, with that guy's courage to do anything, it was very likely that he would have killed Yan Juexing. There would not have been the disaster of Lingfang Valley and the disaster of Heart Cleansing Lake. However, it was too late to say anything now. Maybe he had caused big trouble for Yu Qianqiu. Yan Juexing would definitely not let him go. When Lan Feng shook his head slightly and felt a little regretful, he helped Wen Rui up on the spot to see if he could help him get rid of Yan Juexing's control. On both sides of the road leading to Lingfang Valley, there were stone tablets singing praises of Lingfang Valley for saving the world and saving people. The word pious was written on the faces of the people who came and went. That was the respect for Lingfang Valley from the bottom of their hearts. However, there was one person who did not seem to fit in with the crowd. Nobody noticed when he appeared among the passers-by. This person was wearing a black robe and walking slowly. His long black hair was draped over his shoulders. Half of his face was covered by his long hair, while the other half of his face looked unusually cold. The gaze that he revealed was as calm as stagnant water. Whether it was his temperament or attire, he was different from ordinary people. The passers-by who came and went could not help but look at him. However, they would subconsciously stay away from him. Because they were too close to each other, they felt a bone-chilling coldness, as if they weren't approaching a human, but a block of ice in the winter. After entering Lingfang Valley, one could immediately smell the medicinal fragrance. The surrounding scenery was quiet and the vegetation was lush and green. There were many unknown small flowers in the medicine fields on both sides of the valley. When the breeze blew, they would sway shyly, appearing small and delicate. The long-haired man in black raised his head and looked at the two big words medicine hut on the opposite mountain. Then, he followed the passers-by into the long row of spirit hut where patients were treated. The spirit hut was crude, but it did not lose its elegance. Even though the four sides were hollow and ventilated, the medicinal fragrance was far richer than the outside. After the long-haired man in black looked around coldly, he silently sat on the bench with the others and waited in line. Chapter 764. However, no one was willing to sit close to him. His left and right sides became empty, which was not harmonious with the surrounding atmosphere. All of a sudden, he became extremely conspicuous in the abode. It was hard not to be noticed by the disciples of Lingfang Valley. The disciples of Lingfang Valley who were busy in the abode all looked at him. Someone walked to his side and looked at him suspiciously. "Are you here to see a doctor?" Yan Juexing did not even look at him. He shook his head slightly and said, "I'm here to deliver a message." "Message?" That person was taken aback and asked in astonishment, "What message?" "Third brother Exian asked me to deliver the message," Yan Juexing said lightly. The ordinary people at the side naturally didn't know what he was talking about. But how could the disciples of Spirit Fang Valley not know who third brother Exian was? When they heard what he said, they quickly walked over and stared at him, but no one could see through his cultivation. The person immediately asked, "What message did third brother Exian ask you to deliver? Are you ninth brother Exian?" Yan Juexing looked at him and said lightly, "Third brother Exian told me that I can only tell ninth brother Exian." Lingfang Valley was almost turned upside down because of third brother Exian and his brothers. The person naturally knew that it was not a trivial matter. He looked around the ordinary people who were staring at them curiously and frowned. He immediately smiled and cupped his hands at Yan Juexing. "It must be hard for you to come all the way here to deliver the message. Please follow me to the back of the mountain. I have some good tea to quench your thirst." Yan Juexing said lightly, "It's okay. I'm not thirsty. It's good here. I'll wait for ninth brother Exian here." The disciple of Lingfang Valley hesitated for a while and then whispered to the person beside him, "Quickly go and ask ninth uncle master to come." The person beside him immediately ran out of the abode. The person then asked with a smile, "I haven't asked for your name yet. I wonder if you can tell me?" However, Yan Juexing did not speak anymore. He sat there stiffly and looked straight, as if he did not hear anything. The person was a little embarrassed, but he could not say anything. He could only wait for ninth brother Exian. Of course, he was also guarding. Since this person knew about third brother Exian, he could not let him go. Not long after, a tall and thin man in gray quickly ran into the abode. It was ninth brother Exian. The crowd parted to let him in. The disciple who answered before immediately pointed, "Ninth Uncle Master, that's him." Old ninth Exian sized him up and his pupils shrank. He discovered that this person was actually at the early stage of soul formation. However, in the cultivation world, anyone who could reach the soul formation stage was not a nobody, but he had never seen this person before. Yan Juexing tilted his head and looked at him. He slowly stood up and said indifferently, "You're ninth Exian?" Because the two of them had never met before, they didn't know each other. Exian Laojiu cupped his hands and said, "I am indeed Exian Laojiu. I heard that you are here on behalf of my third brother. Is this true?" "Of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come all the way here," Yan Juexing said calmly. Ninth brother Exian got the confirmation and became anxious. However, when he saw the ordinary people around, he immediately waved his hand and said, "Please move to the back of the mountain. We can talk slowly." "No need. If you have anything to say it here." Yan Juexing refused. Ninth brother Exian was stunned. He looked at the crowd again and forced a smile. "Then I will follow you." "Oh right. I haven't asked for your name?" Yan Juexing stared at him and slowly said word by word, "Yan Juexing." When he said that, all the disciples of Lingfang Valley were shocked as if they were facing a great enemy. Ninth brother Exian clenched his fists so tightly that there was an explosive sound. However, he was immediately stunned as if he had noticed something wrong. He sized up Yan Juexing again and said in a deep voice, "Who exactly are you? Why did you come to my Lingfang Valley to seek pleasure?" As far as he knew, Yan Juexing was only in the early stage of tribulation passing. Moreover, one of his arms was chopped off by Yu Qianqiu. The characteristics of this person couldn't match with Yan Juexing at all. How could it be Yan Juexing? Therefore, he concluded that this person came to Lingfang Valley to make trouble. "What do you think I can gain by coming to Lingfang Valley to pretend to be Yan Juexing?" Yan Juexing snorted. His eyes suddenly glowed with a demonic red light and locked onto ninth brother Exian's eyes. Ninth brother Exian's expression instantly became dull. The surrounding people only felt that the red light was dazzling. When the red light disappeared, they looked at Yan Juexing in horror as if they had seen a monster. They all retreated and knocked over many things. The disciples of Lingfang Valley also stared at Yan Juexing inexplicably. They didn't know what was going on with the red light that burst out from his eyes. Yan Juexing suddenly raised his finger and pointed at the disciple of Lingfang Valley who was talking to him before and said, "Kill him!" Ninth brother Exian's dull expression instantly came back to life. Without hesitation, he struck the disciple beside him with his palm. That disciple never thought that ninth brother Exian would sneak attack him. He didn't even have the thought of dodging. Immediately, he let out a shrill scream and died on the spot. Yan Juexing nodded his head in satisfaction. However, the surrounding people were terrified. Murder! Suddenly, screams could be heard from all directions. They rushed out of the abode and scrambled out of the valley. The disciples of Lingfang Valley were also terrified. They rushed out of the abode in a flash, afraid that they would be implicated by ninth brother Exian. In an instant, Lingfang Valley was in a mess. People were screaming and running everywhere. Inside the abode, ninth brother Exian stood beside Yan Juexing expressionlessly. Yan Juexing glanced at him and a smile appeared on his calm face. Things went smoother than he had imagined. He had long heard that the people of Lingfang Valley cared about their reputation under the guidance of Lu Yanqing. They definitely wouldn't fight with him in front of mortals. Therefore, he blended in with the mortals and brazenly broke into Lingfang Valley. This method seemed easy to expose, but in fact it was safer than sneak attacks. If he sneaked in, he might not be able to hide from the experts in the valley. For example, it was said that Lu Yanqing, the world's most beautiful woman, was beaten by Changchun from the middle stage of soul formation back to the early stage of soul formation. However, after seeing her in Cornucopia Bing Chengzi, he was surprised by Lu Yanqing's miraculous hands, and her cultivation actually recovered to the middle stage of soul formation. Therefore, there was no harm done. If he sneaked in and was discovered by Lu Yanqing, he was afraid that things would not go so smoothly. Now that he had ninth brother Xian, even if Lu Yanqing used force with two soul formation experts working together, he really didn't have to be afraid of her. Thinking of this, the smile on Yan Juexing's face became wider. In the end, he laughed wildly. His wild laughter echoed in Lingfang Valley. The chaos in Lingfang Valley had already alarmed the people in the medicine hut. The remaining 4 brothers of the Xian family all rushed to the scene. After seeing the situation in the abode, they looked at each other. The eldest brother of the Xian family frowned and said in a deep voice, "Ninth brother, what's going on?" On the top of medicine hut, Lu Yanqing, who was dressed in green, led the enchantress and Yen Yu out of the small courtyard. The 3 of them stopped at the edge of the cliff and silently watched the movement below. Inside the abode, ninth brother Xian called out to them, "Eldest brother, second brother, fourth brother, eighth brother, come in for a moment." He pointed to Yan Juexing and said, "He brought news of third brother. You guys come and listen together." The 4 brothers looked at each other. The younger brother did not suspect anything was wrong when he called. Instead, he flashed in with a face full of surprise. As for the disciples of Spirit Fang Valley outside, they still did not know what had happened just now. After all, no one had ever seen anyone use the evil magic of the magic eye. They thought that the previous disciple had somehow offended Xian Laojiu. Thinking of that scene, everyone had a lingering fear in their hearts. No one stopped the 4 brothers from entering. Once the 4 brothers entered the abode, they couldn't avoid the dead bodies on the ground. Eldest brother Xian stared at the ground and frowned. "Ninth brother, what's going on?" Just as he looked up, he saw the eyes of the man in black next to ninth brother Xian explode with red light, messing up his consciousness. His expression instantly became sluggish. The other 3 immediately felt something was wrong. Especially second brother Xian, his reaction was quite fast. He immediately shouted, "Where did this demon come from?" He directly threw a palm at Yan Juexing, deciding to stop him first. Who would have thought that, in a blur, ninth brother Xian had already teleported in front of him. Second brother Xian was stunned and was forced to stop. But what he never expected was that Xian Laojiu's lightning-fast punch had already landed on his chest. In a situation where he had no defense at all, he was mercilessly punched by a soul formation stage master. The situation could be imagined. "You!" Before second brother Xian could finish his words, he was sent flying by the punch. With a bang, he crashed into the abode. Blood spurted out from his mouth, spraying into the air like a blood pillar. With a bang, he fell outside, completely motionless. He didn't even have the chance to scream. Fourth brother and eighth brother Xian simply couldn't believe that all of this was real. The 2 of them were completely dumbfounded and their minds were blank. Yan Juexing, who subdued eldest brother Xian, also didn't expect such a good thing to happen. He calmly subdued the dazed fourth brother and eighth brother one by one. After the Spirit Fang Valley disciples outside the abode witnessed all of this, they were all dumbfounded. They didn't know what was going on. Normally, they were like blood brothers. Why did they start killing each other? Some of the disciples who reacted quickly recalled that Yan Juexing had previously said that his name was Yan Juexing. Coupled with his demonic red eyes, they immediately shouted, "He is Yan Juexing. That is the demon eye. Martial uncles and martial uncles are being controlled by the demon eye." When Lu Yanqing saw second brother Xian flying out of the abode, she was also a little dumbfounded. When she heard someone shouting, "Yan Juexing and the demon eye," she was immediately shocked and directly teleported down. The Allure Beauty and Yan Yu looked at each other in horror, then quickly followed after them. Yan Juexing was slowly walking out of the abode. Behind him were the eldest brother, fourth brother, eighth brother, and ninth brother of the Enchanting clan. When Lu Yanqing landed, Yan Juexing immediately stopped and sneered. Then, two women landed behind Lu Yanqing, causing him to squint his eyes. He nodded slightly and said, "100 charms, beauty, and Master Yan. I didn't expect you to still be here. It really surprised me. Good, this is really good." Chapter 765. He was really happy. He thought that Yu Qianqiu would definitely take the two women away when he came here last time. He didn't expect them to still be here. If he had known this, he would have come to Spirit Fang Valley first instead of going to the one family to suffer. But then again, if he wasn't full of self-confidence and wanted to control Wen Lanfeng to help him deal with Niu Yud, so that he could deal with Yu Qianqiu, he wouldn't have provoked Wen Lanfeng for the time being. Lu Yanqing was even more so. To put it bluntly, Lu Yanqing was just a vase to him, no matter how beautiful she was. But controlling Wen Lanfeng would be of great use. Not to mention the shame of Spirit Fang Valley, it was estimated that Wen Lanfeng was the only one in the cultivation world who could barely be Niu Yud's opponent. Moreover, he could get the whereabouts of Yu Qianqiu from Wen Lanfeng. At the same time, he could use Wen Lanfeng to intimidate those in the cultivation world who had bad intentions towards him. In short, as long as he controlled Wen Lanfeng, many troubles could be easily solved. But reality was cruel. Wen Lanfeng wasn't so easy to deal with. If Wen Rui hadn't succeeded in the sneak attack and injured Wen Lanfeng, he might have had to use blood escape to escape. Since Wen Lanfeng couldn't control him, he could only destroy him to avoid endless troubles. Moreover, after the incident with the one family, Wen Lanfeng definitely wouldn't let him go. Because of this, Lu Yanqing played a role in his eyes. This was also the purpose of his coming to Spirit Fang Valley. However, what he never thought was that Temptress and Yan Yu were still here. One had an ambiguous relationship with Yu Qianqiu, and the other was Niu Yud's woman. The harvest this time was simply too great. How could Yan Juexing not be happy when the two women who had a close relationship with his two enemies were here? Temptress and Yan Yu looked at each other speechlessly. The three women, including Lu Yanqing, were shocked. They had all seen Yan Juexing, and the person in front of them was indeed Yan Juexing. However, what the three of them couldn't understand was that didn't Yu Qianqiu say that Yan Juexing's arm had been chopped off by him? Why was it still fine? Out of the three girls, Lu Yanqing was the most shocked. She could tell that Yan Juexing's cultivation had already reached the spirit-severing stage. When the disciples of Spirit Fang Valley saw their grandmaster, they immediately became courageous. A few disciples hurriedly carried second brother Exine's body over and cried, "Grandmaster, Master is already dead." Lu Yanqing was not a person who was easily angered. Seeing her disciple die tragically, she immediately flew into a rage. Her beautiful face was frosty as she stared at Yan Juexing and shouted, "Yan Juexing, did you kill him?" Yan Juexing smiled but did not answer. Instead, it was the Ling Fang Valley disciple who stammered, "Grandmaster, my master was killed by ninth martial uncle." Lu Yanqing was shocked when she heard this. She glared at old ninth Exine and said, "Old ninth, is what he said true?" Exine Laojiu stood obediently behind Yan Juexing without saying a word. After Yan Juexing looked at Lu Yanqing from head to toe, he said in a breathtaking tone, "You are indeed the world's most beautiful woman. You are indeed unparalleled in the world. No wonder Wen Lanfeng can't forget you. Although I have seen Senior at the cornucopia, it is a pity that I did not see your true appearance. Seeing you today, this trip was not in vain. This junior finally knows what a beauty is." Not mentioning cornucopia would have been fine, but the moment cornucopia was mentioned, Lu Yanqing regretted it so much that her intestines were about to break. If she had not stopped Yu Qianqiu from making a move, how could Spirit Fang Valley have suffered such a disaster today? For a moment, Yu Qianqiu's warning at the cornucopia kept lingering in her mind. Unfortunately, Yu Qianqiu was right. She regretted not being able to do it in the first place. Where is third brother Exine? Was he also killed by you? Lu Yanqing's white face flashed with unease as she asked. Yan Juexing pointed to old Ninth Exian and the others behind him and said indifferently, "Just like them, alive and well." Lu Yanqing's eyes swept over several disciples and said word by word, "Come back." However, after calling out a few times, no one listened to her. She immediately gritted her teeth and a pair of small golden knives appeared in her hands. It seemed that she, who had always hated fighting and killing, was also about to make a move. Yan Juexing's face revealed a sarcastic look and said indifferently, "Senior Lu, I advise you not to be impulsive. Otherwise, you will not be able to bear the consequences." As he said, he slightly tilted his head and said, "Boss Exan, your master's emotions are very unstable. You should die in front of your master and let her calm down." "Yes." Boss Exian bowed slightly and directly hit the top of his head with his palm. In an instant, red and white things burst out and he fell to the ground on the spot. He twitched twice and stopped moving. "No." Lu Yanqing exclaimed. The Spirit Fang Valley disciples behind were shocked and looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. The Temptress and Yan Yu's faces also changed greatly. Only Yan Juexing and the others were indifferent. Especially old Ninth Exian and the others, they simply did not care about the life and death of their own brothers. Yan Juexing said indifferently, "Senior Lu, I was right. If you dare to make me unhappy again, I only need to say a word and all your disciples will die in front of you. If you don't believe me, you can try again." Lu Yanqing heard this and immediately felt a sense of powerlessness. Looking at the dead boss Exian, she was a little confused. "Senior Lu." Yan Juexing suddenly called out softly. Lu Yanqing slowly raised her head. Just as she made eye contact with him, she immediately saw a demonic red light bursting out from his eyes. In the blink of an eye, she was in the middle of a vast sea of blood. Numerous blood vines quickly entangled her and tied her up. Lu Yanqing was shocked and immediately remembered that the other party was using the demonic eye. She immediately struggled and used all her strength to break the blood vines that tied her up. At the moment when the blood vines broke, her eyes regained clarity and the scene of Spirit Fang Valley reappeared. Yan Juexing slightly staggered and his face was a little pale. He finally believed that the demonic eye could only be controlled by those below the soul formation stage. Once one reached the soul formation stage, he could only control opponents of the same level. With Lu Yanqing's cultivation, he had no way to control her. Amidst the exclamations of the Spirit Fang Valley disciples, the Temptress and Yan Yu supported Lu Yanqing at the same time and said anxiously in unison, "Senior, are you all right?" Lu Yanqing shook her head slightly and gritted her teeth with a pretty face. "Yan Juexing, how dare you use the demonic eye on me?" Yan Juexing slightly calmed down and said indifferently, "Why can't I? It's a pity that Senior Lu's cultivation is profound and this junior can't control it for the time being. What a pity." "You!" Lu Yanqing glanced at the disciples that were controlled by Yan Juexing and swallowed the harsh words that were about to come out of her mouth. She gritted her teeth and said, "What do you want for you to let them go?" "Humph humph." Yan Juexing sneered and looked back and forth between the girls. "Who can tell me where Yu Qianqiu is?" The three girls were startled. The Temptress really didn't know where Yu Qianqiu was because she didn't know that Yu Qianqiu was Niu Yud. However, the other two girls knew in their hearts, but they wouldn't say it no matter what. Yan Yu could be said to be dead set on Yu Qianqiu. How could she harm Yu Qianqiu? And Lu Yanqing wasn't the kind of person who would sacrifice others to save her disciple. In the silence, Yan Juexing indifferently said, "Since you're not saying anything, it means that someone knows but doesn't want to tell me. Senior Lu, could it be that you want your disciple to die on the spot?" Lu Yanqing's face instantly turned pale. She bit her lips and said, "I don't even know where Yu Qianqiu is. Even if you kill them all, I still won't know." Yan Juexing was startled. How could he kill all her disciples? They were the bargaining chips to blackmail her. If he killed them all, she would immediately fight him with her life. He immediately nodded and said, "It seems that Senior Lu really doesn't know." As he spoke, the demonic red light in his eyes suddenly appeared again and directly locked onto the Temptress's eyes. The Temptress's expression instantly became stupid and she foolishly walked towards him. "No!" Yan Yu immediately grabbed the temptress and refused to let her go. Yan Juexing snorted coldly. In for a penny, in for a pound. He seized the opportunity and his eyes turned red again. In an instant, he also controlled the careless Yan Yu in his hands. In the end, the two girls walked towards him together. Lu Yanqing quickly grabbed the two of them. Yan Juexing angrily shouted, "If you don't want old Ninth Xan to die, let go." Lu Yanqing's body trembled. She subconsciously let go and watched the two girls walk towards Yan Juexing. Yan Juexing snorted coldly and stared at the two girls who were walking over. He asked, "Which one of you knows where Yu Qianqiu is?" The two girls' dumbfounded expressions came back to life. The temptress shook her head to indicate that she didn't know. Yan Yu paused and then reported, "Yu Qianqiu is actually Niu Yud. Niu Yud and Yu Qianqiu are the same person. He should be in the demon domain." "What?" Yan Juexing exclaimed. He thought that he had heard wrongly. He hurriedly asked again, "Are you sure that Niu Yud is Yu Qianqiu?" Yan Yu said respectfully, "There's no mistake, I'm sure, because I realized that Niu Yud has been wearing a human skin mask." Yan Juexing still didn't believe it. He said, "Then why is there such a huge difference in their cultivation?" "I can't figure it out either," Yan Yu replied. Yan Juexing was worried that she was fooling him. He checked again to make sure that Yan Yu was indeed under his control and wasn't lying. He was immediately dumbfounded. If Yan Yu hadn't told him, he would never have thought that Niu Yud was Yu Qianqiu. This also explained why Niu Yud purposely spread the news to make him be hunted even though he had no enmity with him. Turned out that it was all Yu Qianqiu's doing. Such a shameless way of doing things was indeed Yu Qianqiu's style. However, he couldn't figure out why his cultivation could shake the cultivation world when he was Niu Yud, but his cultivation was only at the tribulation stage when he was Yu Qianqiu. There was definitely a secret that he didn't know. Maybe Yu Qianqiu was playing tricks on him. Otherwise, with Niu Yud's ability, there was no reason for him to show mercy when fighting with him. At the thought of this, anger burned in his chest. He had been fooled by that guy for such a long time. It was intolerable. He suddenly turned around and said, "Senior Lu, I'm afraid I need your help with something. Please ask Senior Wen Lanfeng to come over." No matter how high his cultivation was, he felt a sense of helplessness when faced with Wen Rui, who was controlled by the demon eye. The crux of the matter was that this kind of magical technique was too strange. It directly controlled the primordial spirit. However, the primordial spirit was fragile to begin with. If one were to use brute force with their profound cultivation, they might accidentally injure their original body. In the worst-case scenario, they would die on the spot. In the best-case scenario, they would become an idiot. After trying it out, Wen Lanfeng did not dare to be reckless again. Unless someone was proficient in spells related to the primordial spirit, or Yan Juexing himself removed the control on the victim, it would be very difficult for ordinary people to cure them. It was not easy to cultivate a master of the soul formation stage. While he was frowning and worrying, suddenly there was a fluctuation in the communication array not far behind him. Wen Lanfeng turned around and slowly walked into the array. After contacting the person who sent the message, he immediately said in shock, "Yanqing, what's wrong with you?" After listening to the other party's complaint, Wen Lanfeng did not care about anything else. He disappeared, leaving an afterimage on the spot. As soon as he left the holy temple, Wen Lanfeng quickly flew in the direction of Lingfang Valley. At this time, he was burning with anxiety. He never expected that Yan Juexing would actually kill his way to Lingfang Valley after beating him up here. Although Lu Yanqing's sobbing was not very clear, he could hear that the situation was very critical. He could not wait to hear what was said, so he immediately rushed over. His flying speed was increased to the extreme. In the blink of an eye, he passed thousands of mountains and rivers below and quickly swept backward. Because Lingfang Valley was originally adjacent to Baiwan country, the distance was not too far. Coupled with Wen Lanfeng's speed of rushing, he arrived in less than half a day. As soon as he arrived in the sky above Lingfang Valley, he immediately saw Lu Yanqing alone in the valley, confronting Yan Juexing and the others. when Lanfeng brought out a shadow and directly landed beside Lu Yanqing. He anxiously said, "Yanqing, are you okay?" Lu Yanqing seemed to see a savior. She shook her head repeatedly and said, "I'm fine. Quickly save them. They are all controlled by the demon eye." She pointed to old Ninth Exian and the others. Although she said that she was fine, her body was stained with blood and minced flesh. When Lanfeng's eyes were about to crack, a majestic murderous aura erupted in an instant, stirring up the dust on the ground and causing stones to roll far away. When Lanfeng suddenly turned around and shouted angrily, "Yan Juexing, you will die today." Yan Juexing was also secretly surprised. When Lanfeng was indeed Wen Lanfeng. He was able to cover such a long distance in such a short time. It could be seen that his cultivation was high and his flying speed was fast. On the surface, he calmly said, "You want me to die? I'm afraid it won't be that easy." He waved his hand and pointed to the people around him. "With so many people to die with me, I'm not afraid of death. Then I will fulfill your wish." When Lanfeng shouted and the giant silver sword flashed in an instant, Yan Juexing was shocked. This gentle guy was about to go crazy. His 5 claws with black light flowing around them directly clasped old Ninth Exian's neck. "No!" Lu Yanqing screamed and quickly pulled Wen Lanfeng and pleaded, "You find a way to save them, he will kill them." "Ah!" When Lanfeng looked up to the sky and roared. The air seemed to be shaken by this roar. The people around him felt uncomfortable and deafened. Blue veins appeared on his neck. He forcibly suppressed his murderous aura and the giant silver sword flashed back and stabbed in front of him. When Lanfeng turned his head with a painful expression and looked at Lu Yanqing, he still forced a smile and said, "How do you want me to save them?" Lu Yanqing was confused and shook her head to show that she did not know. Yan Juexing shook his head and said, "I've always heard that heroes have a weakness for the charms of beauties. I didn't expect to see this scene today." When Lanfeng took a deep breath and slightly calmed his emotions, he looked at him and said, "What do you want in order to let them go?" The black light on Yan Juexing's 5 claws converged and he let go of old Ninth Exian. He looked at his palm and said slowly, "Senior Wen's previous punch is really unforgettable. I'm not a gentleman, so I'm very vengeful. If Senior can resist my palm and not die, I will let them go." When Lanfeng sneered and said, "You're just spouting nonsense. How can I believe you?" Yan Juexing immediately said with a smile, "I think Senior Wen has a deep understanding of the power of my devil fist. But this time I won't use my fist, only my palm. I swear, I will only use one palm. If Senior Wen can withstand my palm without fighting back and not die, then I will let them go. If I break this oath, let me die a horrible death." He was straightforward and simply made the oath first. When Lanfeng's chest heaved, after a little hesitation, he said in a loud voice, "Okay, I promise you." "No." Lu Yanqing pulled him again and repeatedly shook her head, indicating that he should not take the risk. When Lanfeng smiled and affectionately pulled her hands away, he comforted her, "Don't worry, he's just a kid. With his little ability, he can't do anything to me." Lu Yanqing asked in disbelief, "Are you really sure?" When Lanfeng laughed heartily and said, "Of course I'm sure. Do you think I will die? If I can't chase you in this life, how can I be willing to die?" A trace of helplessness flashed through his eyes. He patted Lu Yanqing's hands and walked past the giant silver sword in front of him. He stood firmly and shouted, "Yan Juexing, don't dawdle. Do it. Straightforward." Yan Juexing praised and then turned back to the people behind him and said, "If Senior Wen does anything out of line, you all immediately kill yourself in front of him." "Yes." They saluted and accepted the order. Yan Juexing nodded with a smile and walked straight forward. He was not afraid of Wen Lanfeng's sneak attack. He calmly stood in front of Wen Lanfeng and asked, "Is Senior Wen ready? Don't be so long-winded." When Lanfeng scolded and secretly used his whole body to defend, "Then I won't be polite." Yan Juexing raised his palm and a layer of bright red luster surged on the surface. When Lanfeng's pupils shrank slightly and the defense in his body was raised to the limit. Lu Yanqing also saw a trace of something wrong and hurriedly shouted, "Stop!" Yan Zhuixing would not listen to her. With a loud bang, he had already heavily printed his palm on Wen Lanfeng's chest. After that, he immediately flashed back. Wen Lanfeng's expression changed, and he took a few steps back to relieve the force. However, he still felt a strange force penetrating his chest into his body. He felt numb, and the flow of blood in his body seemed to have slowed down a lot in an instant. In fact, the power of this palm alone was not a big problem for Wen Lanfeng with his cultivation level. However, Wen Lanfeng immediately felt that he had been hit by a secret move and stared at Yan Zhuixing. Lu Yanqing quickly flashed over and held him and asked anxiously, "Are you okay?" Wen Lanfeng breathed a sigh of relief and patted his chest. He calmly smiled and said, "It's just so. It's not a big problem." Yan Zhuixing immediately shook his head and sighed, "Senior One, why do you have to deceive yourself? Although I haven't practiced this blood demon palm for long, and its power isn't great enough to kill someone on the spot, I believe that very few people will be able to survive for more than 10 days. Within 10 days, all the blood in their body will dry up. Of course, with Senior Wen's cultivation level, I think you can endure it for 10 days, but after 10 days, you will still die." When Lanfeng, Lu Yanqing was anxious, but before she finished speaking, Wen Lanfeng waved his hand to stop her. Wen Lanfeng stared at Yan Zhuixing and said in a deep voice, "I don't care if it's 10 days or not. At least I'm fine now. Immediately fulfill your oath." Chapter 767. You're wrong, Senior One. Yan Zhuixing had a confident look on his face. He smiled faintly and said, "We agreed that I would only let them go if you could withstand my palm strike and not die. However, you will definitely die 10 days later. Why should I let them go?" "Despicable!" Lu Yanqing screamed while trembling. Yan Zhuixing raised his brows and sneered. "I can't imagine how you became one of the 4 great eccentrics in the cultivation world. In my opinion, Bai Changchun is the only one among the 4 great eccentrics in the cultivation world. As for the others, but it's not difficult to understand. Only people like you, who are beneficial and harmless to everyone, can live until now. Even I didn't think of touching you before, but you're still a burden, so it's a pity not to use you." Lu Yanqing's face turned pale and her body trembled uncontrollably. She suddenly realized that her subconscious self-discipline and benevolence were just a joke in the eyes of others. It turned out that others saw her as an idiot and a burden. When Lanfeng snorted coldly, the giant silver sword behind him flew out and hovered in the air, ready to strike. "I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to let them go or not?" When Lanfeng shouted in a deep voice, "It seems that Senior One will kill me if I don't let them go. But Senior One won't let me go if I let them go." Yan Zhuixing looked back at the people behind him and disapprovingly said, "Even so, I've decided to keep my word and let them go. But it's not my business whether they go with you or not. Well, you can go back now." The last sentence was for 9th Xian and the others. He then turned around and walked toward the abode, not worried that when Lanfeng would attack him, he naturally had something to rely on. However, 9th Xian and the others just glanced at the opposite man and woman indifferently before turning around and following Yan Zhuixing. When Lanfeng angrily shouted, "Quickly remove the control on them," Yan Zhuixing walked to the entrance of the abode and stopped after hearing the words. Then he lightly said, "Senior One, I think your memory shouldn't be too bad. I only swore to let them go, not to remove the control over them. Don't confuse things. You're forcing my hand. It seems I have no choice but to kill you." When Lanfeng gnashed his teeth, he had never been teased like this before. He should have killed Yan Zhuixing with his sword, but he could not ignore Lu Yanqing's feelings. The love between a man and a woman naturally couldn't avoid the tragedy of a hero's shortness of breath. Yan Zhuixing shook his head and said with a smile, "Senior One is being too serious. Actually, there isn't any irreconcilable conflict between us. I also don't want to fight to the death with Senior One. There is still a chance to salvage the relationship between us. I can remove the control on them. I can remove the control on third brother Xian. I can remove the control on Wenrui, and I can even help you neutralize the power of the Blood Devil's palm." When Lu Yanqing heard this, she suddenly looked up, and a glimmer of hope ignited in her eyes. "I'm afraid it's not as simple as you said." When Lan Feng sneered, "Say it. What's the condition?" "One life in exchange for all of their lives." Yan Juexing waved his hand and pointed at the few people beside him. When Lan Feng narrowed his eyes, "Who do you want me to kill?" "Yu Qianqiu. I want you to help me kill Yu Qianqiu." When he spoke this name, Yan Juexing was finally unable to keep his composure. His voice was almost howling, and his eyes were filled with rage. He was extremely agitated, and he seemed to wish for nothing more than to tear Yu Qianqiu into pieces. When Lan Feng slightly paused and shook his head, "Yan Juexing, you're wrong. I can't kill Yu Qianqiu. Even if you kill everyone, I can't kill him." He looked back at Lu Yanqing and smiled bitterly. "Yanqing, I'm sorry. This is all I can do for you. Everything will be over after I kill this bastard. It's all my fault. I've implicated you." Lu Yanqing's shoulders trembled, and she buried her head and cried bitterly. When Lanfeng's face was full of pity, his outstretched arm paused for a moment, and finally, he wrapped it around her shoulder, hugging her for the first time in his life. He gently stroked her beautiful hair with his palm. Yan Juexing's pupils shrank. He realized that he seemed to have pushed a little too far. Things were going to be bad. He immediately said loudly, "It's fine if you don't kill him. As long as you find Yu Qianqiu and bring him here, I will fulfill my promise. The grudge between me and him will be settled by us. There is no need for others to intervene." When Lan Feng tilted his head and sneered, "Do you think I will believe your words again?" Yan Juexing shook his head slightly and raised his finger to Lu Yanqing, who was in his arms, and said, "Senior One, even if you kill me, have you ever thought about what will happen to her after you die? Look around. Spirit Fang Valley has already collapsed. If you die, she will no longer have anyone to rely on. Senior Lu's beauty must be coveted by many. Without your protection, I can't imagine what will happen to her. Do you really want her to become a plaything under someone else's crotch?" "Shut up!" When Lan Feng shouted loudly, causing the entire valley to buzz. These words were something that he could not bear even if he died. They had completely hit his soft spot. Yan Juexing smiled. He knew that his words had hit his soft spot. He said indifferently, "Find Yu Qianqiu and I will fulfill my promise. And Senior One will also get what he wanted. He will grow old with Senior Lu. Isn't that good?" When Lan Feng hesitated, he was indeed tempted. Wasn't growing old with Lu Yanqing what he had been pursuing? Taking a step back, even if he did not agree to his request, he could take the opportunity to leave and find someone for Lu Yanqing to entrust her life to. This woman really could not withstand the wind and rain of the cultivation world. As long as he avoided Lu Yanqing's eyes, he would immediately come back and kill this thief. "Since you want to kill Yu Qianqiu so much, why don't you settle the score with him yourself?" When Lan Feng asked, "Do you want me to go to the demon ghost domain to find Niu Yud?" Yan Juexing shook his head and said, "No, the demon ghost domain has shaken the cultivation world for so many years. There must be something strange about it. Otherwise, with that kid's cultivation, how could he scare away so many spirit-severing experts? I won't take such a huge risk without knowing anything about him, so I'll have to ask Senior One to help me find him. There is no need for Senior One to worry about the rest." When Lan Feng was slightly startled, it seemed that this guy already knew that Yu Qianqiu was Niu Yud. After thinking about it, he firmly said, "Fine, I promise you." Lu Yanqing suddenly raised her head and shook her head with tears in her eyes, indicating that he could not do this. Yan Juexing laughed and said, "Senior One, you should have done this long ago." When Lan Feng shook Lu Yanqing's shoulder and said, "Yanqing, let's go and find Yu Qianqiu together." Seeing the two of them slowly turn around, Yan Juexing was stunned and resolutely stopped them. "Wait, Senior One, you can go alone. Senior Lu, please bear with it for the time being and be a hostage here. Otherwise, won't this junior's efforts be in vain if the two of you don't return? You worry too much. I am not as despicable as you. When Lan Feng coldly snorted and pulled Lu Yanqing away. Yan Juexing suddenly shouted, Senior Lu. Senior One does not listen to advice. Don't be stupid. I don't want anything to happen to your disciple. You better think twice before you act. Lu Yanqing's delicate body shook as if struck by lightning. She immediately froze on the spot and slowly withdrew her hand from Wen Lanfeng's hand. Wen Lanfeng looked at her with a complicated gaze. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. If it was not because he did not want her to suffer even the slightest grievance, how could a mere Yan Juexing force him to this step? Did he really think that he was easy to bully in the cultivation world? When Lanfeng's gaze moved away from Lu Yanqing with difficulty, he slightly closed his eyes and raised his head, letting out a helpless sigh in his heart. Forget it. Then he suddenly turned back, narrowed his eyes and said word by word, Yan Juexing, I can help you find Yu Qianqiu, but I warn you, if you dare to hurt anyone here, I swear to God, even if I have to explode my Danton, I will kill you. Yan Juexing was slightly shocked when he heard this. The self-explosion of a late soul transformation expert was not a joke. If Wen Lanfeng really went all out, he was afraid that it would be too late for him to use the blood escape. After his expression stiffened, he smiled indifferently and said, Senior One can rest assured. As long as no one forces this junior to make a move, before Senior brings Yu Qianqiu here, this junior will not harm anyone, especially Senior Lu. Humph! When Lan Feng coldly snorted and quickly flew into the sky, looking at Ling Fong Valley below, she resolutely turned back and flew in the direction of the demon domain. Across the vast sky, the anxious Wen Lanfeng flew faster and faster, and the floating cloud retreated in a flash. When the flying speed increased to the extreme, Wen Lanfeng suddenly felt that the strange power he had barely suppressed finally spread in his body. The speed of the true essence's circulation slowed down, and a severe numbness came from his limbs. His flying speed instantly slowed down. When Lanfeng's face darkened, and he tried to suppress it again. However, it had already spread, and it was no longer as difficult as when he was hit by the palm. As the strange power spread everywhere, his whole body gradually contracted, and his blood seemed to have a tendency to coagulate. After a futile attempt to suppress it, he simply stopped suppressing it and used all his strength to increase his flying speed to the extreme he could exert. A shadow streaked across the sky. The demon domain was vast and mysterious, and many people wanted to peep at its true appearance but dared not cross it. The 1,000-mile lake, located in the center, was a vast scenery, like a bright mirror inlaid in the earth. On Obedient Island, Lady Mu was sitting cross-legged under the tall magnolia tree with a serene look on her face, meditating without being disturbed by anyone. The spirit stones given to her by Yu Qianqiu were enough for her to use for a period of time. Lady Mu was very satisfied with her current life. Although she was trapped in the demon domain, as long as she followed the rules, she still had a lot of freedom. Yu Qianqiu almost did not interfere with her at all. The sound of flying came from the sky. As soon as Lady Mu opened her eyes, she saw a figure land in the center of the island. Madame Mu quickly withdrew her qi and teleported over. She was slightly startled when she saw the person. The person's appearance was both familiar and strange to her. When she saw that it was Wen Lanfeng, she was shocked by his appearance. Chapter 768. At this time, when Lanfeng looked haggard, his skin was blue, his eye sockets and face were slightly sunken, and his cheekbones were clearly protruding. He was much thinner than before, looking like a living dead, especially the corner of his mouth, where there were faint black bloodstains. Lady Mu asked incredulously, "What's wrong with you, Mr. One? Are you hurt?" When Lanfeng scanned Shuntian Island with his divine sense and found that only Lady Mu was there, he frowned and asked, "Where's Yu Qianqiu? Where did he go?" Lady Mu bowed and said, "Mr. One has been away for some time and hasn't come back." When Lanfeng snorted coldly, "Don't try to hide it from me. The Yu Qianqiu I mentioned is your Devil Ghost Region's torture envoy, Niu Yud. Do you think I don't know? Tell me, where has he gone? It turned out that he already knew. Lady Mu immediately explained, "The Mr. I mentioned is the torture envoy. He has indeed left for a long time and hasn't come back." When Lan Feng flew into a rage when he heard this and said furiously, "Bastard! As the Devil Ghost Region's torture envoy, how can he still run around like before? What does he think the Devil Ghost Region's torture envoy is? Let him learn more from Bai Changchun." He couldn't help but be angry. He came here with all his strength to find Yu Qianqiu, but he didn't expect to find him, so he couldn't help but vent his anxiety. However, a hint of annoyance flashed in Lady Mu's eyes. She thought, "You're just a defeated opponent of the old torture emissary. Now that the old torture emissary is no longer here, you dare to come here and show off your power? If it weren't for the old torture emissary's mercy, you wouldn't be standing here roaring today." Lady Mu's expression instantly turned cold, and she stood there without saying a word. After calming down, when Lan Feng was slightly startled and knew that he had lost his composure. If Bai Changchun was still here, he would be courting death if he dared to do this. After a pause, he softened his tone and said, "Lady Mu, don't misunderstand. I don't mean anything else. I just have something important to talk to him about." "Where is he?" Miss Mu replied, "Teacher comes and goes as he pleases. How can a servant like me inquire about him? I really don't know where he went." When Lan Feng was slightly dumbfounded. That kid always came and went like a shadow. It had always been him looking for others. If others wanted to find him, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Even if he wanted to find him with his current physical condition, he was afraid that he would not be able to hold on much longer before he found him. But if he couldn't be found, then Lu Yanqing would be in danger. "Then do you know when Yu Qianqiu will return?" When Lan Feng asked without any hope. Sure enough, Lady Mu shook her head and said, "I really don't know." When Lan Feng heard this, his face immediately revealed a miserable expression. Could this be fate? Pulling Yu Qianqiu to face Yan Zhuixing was already very heartless. It seemed like it was the will of the heavens to prevent him from finding Yu Qianqiu. However, he still had to try his best to find it. If he found it, there would still be a chance. If he didn't, then there would be no chance at all. When Lan Feng looked around in despair. But the world was so big. Where could he find him? This guy was still in an uproar before. How could he disappear in the blink of an eye? Since there was no news from other countries, it seemed that he could only go to Huaxia to try his luck. Just as he was about to get up and fly away, he found that there was some qi in his body. It turned out that because of this absent-mindedness, he forgot to use his true essence to constantly force the flow of the thick blood in his body to flow, resulting in stagnation and suppression of his meridians. When Lan Feng immediately slapped his chest and spat out a mouthful of extravasated blood. Taking advantage of the loosening of the extravasated blood in his body, he quickly used his profound cultivation to forcibly drive it to maintain the normal operation. Lady Mu was shocked by his action, especially when she saw the dark blood clot that when Lan Feng spat out on the ground. It was like a jelly. However, this jelly state did not last long. After leaving the protection of Wen Lanfeng's true essence, it immediately dried up and quickly turned into a black blood scab on the ground. Lady Mu was shocked and said, "Mr. Wan, what's wrong with you? Are you looking for our master to heal his injury?" She could not believe that a person's blood had become like this flowing in the body. How much pain must he have endured? She already understood why when Lan Feng was angry just now. Turned out that he was anxious to save a life. Little did she know that when Lan Feng was so anxious for her. But it was not for her. When Lan Feng shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "Lady Mu, sorry for disturbing you. I will leave now." Just as he was about to leave, he heard Lady Mu shout, "Mr. Wan, please wait a moment." When Lan Feng was surprised and asked, "What's wrong?" Lady Mu did not know when she had pinched a small silver ball in her hand, but after a moment of hesitation, she still did not show it. Yu Qianqiu had once told her that if anything happened in the demon ghost region, she could find him through this small silver ball. Other visitors were not genuine good things, so he would drive them away. Only people from the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest were an exception. Lady Mu, I'm in a hurry. If you have something to say, please say it quickly. I really can't afford to delay. When Lan Feng smiled bitterly. After a moment of hesitation, Lady Mu did not summon Yu Qianqiu. She gritted her teeth and reminded him, "Isn't Mr. Wen good friends with Mr. Nongzhu? Mr. Nongzhu should be able to find my master." When Lan Feng was startled, then he bowed to Lady Mu in surprise and said, "Thank you for the reminder. If there's a chance, I will definitely repay you generously in the future." After saying that, he directly swept into the sky and flew quickly towards the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest. After watching him leave, Lady Mu tilted her head and looked at the communication array in the center of the island. Yu Qianqiu had told her to pay attention to the communication array. If someone from the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest sent him a message, she could immediately summon him. It seemed that Mr. Nongzhu had also set up a communication array in the Purple Bamboo Forest to contact this place. However, she did not know the location of the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest, and it was not convenient for her to let outsiders touch the things on Obedient Island. Otherwise, it would be against the rules. She reminded Wen Lanfeng so that he could contact the Purple Bamboo Forest through the communication array. If Mr. Nongzhu heard that Wen Lanfeng was looking for Yu Qianqiu, he would definitely ask her. Since it was Mr. Nongzhu who was looking for Yu Qianqiu, she could summon Yu Qianqiu openly. That way, it would not be against Yu Qianqiu's words, who knew that Wen Lanfeng would personally go to the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest. Obviously, Wen Lanfeng did not know that there was also a communication array in the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest. But this was also good. Although it was a little troublesome, it was better than him searching aimlessly. As long as he found Mr. Nongzhu would definitely send him a message to ask him. At that time, he could still summon the torturer back. What Miss Mu did not know was that she was not the only one who had the small silver ball, and she was not the only one who knew how to summon Yu Qianqiu. There was also one in the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest, the darling of Yu Qianqiu. In the South Sea Xiaoyao South Sea, the sea and sky were the same color, and the waves were surging. The sky was blue, and the sea was blue. Between the ebb and flow of the tide, there was an island called the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest. Not far from the island, shrouded in white fog, two women in shorts were playing with a group of whales in the sea. The two sometimes swam in the rippling blue waves, sometimes dived to the bottom of the sea to enjoy the colorful world, sometimes chased colorful fish, and sometimes climbed on the back of the whales to ride the waves. The two women were none other than Furong and Zi. In the past, Furong rarely came into contact with the outside world. Other than being busy in the spiritual herb garden, she would be cooped up in that small dark room. Since she met Yu Qianqiu, her world suddenly became inconceivable. In fact, life was like this. There would always be great changes because you met someone inadvertently. It was just that some people were happy, while others were in pain. The graceful figures of the two girls were drenched by the seawater, revealing their curves. The whales surrounding them were able to feast their eyes on them and eat their tofu. In fact, Furong did not know how to swim. She only learned it from Zi after coming to the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest. After taking the limit-breaking pill, Furong had been stiff for a whole month. As soon as she recovered, she wanted to continue taking the limit-breaking pill to increase her cultivation. She always thought that her cultivation was too low, and she was distressed that she could not help Yu Qianqiu, so she had the heart to work hard. However, Zi was bored to death during this month. Now that she had finally caught her and resurrected, how could she allow her to become a zombie again? No matter what, she had to drag her to have fun with her first. Therefore, this scene of a spring scene appeared in the sea. The two of them could not stop giggling. Just as they were having fun in the sea, suddenly, an extremely smooth whistling sound came from the direction of the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest. The sound echoed in all directions, and it was filled with joy. The two girls on the whale's back immediately turned around. Furong said in shock, "It's Mr. Nongzhu's voice. Isn't he in seclusion? Wow, my master must have broken through to the final stage of the soul formation stage." Ze cried out in surprise and immediately jumped onto the smooth back of the whale. Her two fair and slender legs were quite alluring when she was barefooted. Ze waved at Furong and said, "Quickly put on your clothes. If Master finds out that we ran out of the formation to play, we'll be scolded." "Ah!" Furong also exclaimed and immediately jumped up. The two of them hurriedly took out clothes from the storage bags on their waists and put them on. Before they were completely dressed, Ze immediately pulled Furong and flew towards the foggy island. The group of whales in the sea all spat out water pillars to send the two of them away. Then, they all disappeared into the sea. Once the two of them entered the formation, they quickly passed through the swaying purple bamboo forest and landed in the bamboo paradise. Although this was a large courtyard built entirely from bamboo, it was all built from the rare purple bamboo. In addition, Nongju had an extraordinary eye for aesthetics. The disorderly arrangement was extraordinary and pleasing to the eye. It was like a paradise in the mortal world. The two of them looked at each other. Ze pointed at Nongju's Lang Xian courtyard. The two of them carefully stepped on the scattered purple bamboo leaves, giving off a feeling of being thieves. "Ze, I told you to practice diligently. Did you run out to play with Furong again?" Her voice carried the majesty of a master. However, the person who suddenly appeared at the entrance of Langxian courtyard did not look like a master at all. She lazily leaned against the entrance and had a lazy expression on her face. She looked extremely handsome. Who else could it be other than Nongju? Chapter 769. The two girls stole a glance at each other. Furong's face seemed to be a little worried. Ze pouted and said, "Master, before you came out of seclusion, disciple had been diligently cultivating. It's just that you didn't see it. It just so happens that Furong has passed another month of stiffness, so I want to take her to exercise her body. It wasn't easy for me to find it, but who knew that I would be discovered by you?" Hearing this, Nongju immediately rolled her eyes and snorted coldly. "So, you have been practicing hard. Am I wronging you?" Ze nodded silently, as if she was saying, "You have wronged me." Who knew that there would be a blur in front of Ziyi's eyes, and there would be a bang sound on Ziyi's forehead. Ziyi took a few steps back in pain. She grimaced in pain as she looked at Nongju, who had teleported over. He had just been rewarded with a field snail by his master. Nongju stared at her coldly and said in a low voice, "Ever since you left the purple bamboo forest, you have become more and more interesting. Where is the diligent apprentice? Then, when I was cultivating day and night, didn't you always tell me that a high cultivation doesn't mean everything and that I have to be quick-witted? You also tell me to play more often. Don't just focus on training like an idiot." Z muttered with a wronged expression. "Humph, now that you've left the cultivation world, there's no one to support us anymore." Now that the cultivation world was in troubled times, if he didn't learn more, he would be the one to suffer. Even a playful person like me has started to work hard. How can you be lazy? Nongju reprimanded. Z put down the hand that was rubbing her forehead, and her eyes lit up as she said, "Master, have you already broken through to the soul formation final stage?" Hearing this, Nongju immediately coughed and said proudly, "Of course, your master's aptitude is very rare in this world. Breaking through to the soul formation final stage is a piece of cake." "Wow!" Z screamed and rushed over. She held Nongju's arm and said excitedly, "Master, I admire you so much. In my heart, you are the second senior Bai." Nongju immediately beamed with joy. Which father in the world did not want to be adored by his children? However, after laughing for a while, the expression on his face suddenly froze. He glared at Ze and scolded, "Girl, have you been influenced by Yu Chencho? How dare you try to flatter him and change the topic?" Ze stuck out her tongue and hurriedly retreated a few steps. When Nongju snorted coldly, she suddenly looked up into the sky. The two girls also looked up. They saw a figure flying over the purple bamboo forest. Looking down and reading aloud, "Nongju, are you here? When Lan Feng is here to visit." After the three of them saw Wen Lanfeng's appearance, they were all shocked. It was incredible. Nongzhu let out a breath of cold air and said, "What a powerful demonic art. I thought that Yu Qianqiu was exaggerating and actually wanted to use everyone's knife to kill people. I didn't expect it to be as that guy said. Wen Lanfeng, if you knew this, you shouldn't have stopped Yu Qianqiu at the cornucopia." Wen Lanfeng smiled bitterly and said, "I also regret it, but it's too late to say anything now. Nongzhu, you'd better find a way to help me find Yu Qianqiu first. If Yan Zhuixing can't see Yu Qianqiu, Lu Yanqing will be in danger." These words made the two women a little unhappy. Furong's pretty face was frosty and unhappy, while Zi pouted and said, "Senior One, aren't you pushing Yu Qianqiu into the fire? Yan Zhuixing is so powerful. If Yu Qianqiu goes, isn't he courting death?" When Lanfeng was speechless. He also knew that it was not benevolent to do this, but what could he do? Nongzhu waved her hand to stop Zi from speaking again. She frowned and said, "At this point, if we want to save people, I'm afraid we really need Yu Qianqiu to come forward. Besides, with that guy's temper, if he knew that the two women entrusted to Lu Yanqing were controlled by Yan Zhuixing, and we didn't tell him once something happened to those two women, I'm afraid that brat would remember our enmity for the rest of his life. That guy is a ruthless person. If things get out of hand, he can do anything. Hey, Wen Lanfeng have wronged him. If anything happens to him, Wen Lanfeng will definitely die to apologize." Wen Lanfeng said with shame. As soon as he finished speaking, the breath in his body stagnated again. He hit his chest with his palm and spat out a mass of black blood. It sizzled on the ground and instantly dried up into a black blood scab, which made everyone's heart jump. Nongzhu glanced at the black smoke on the ground and sneered, "Apologize with death? Forget it. You're going to die anyway. What's the point of saying this now? Let's think of a way to save people first. Besides, that guy's life is stinky and long. Even if you die, he may not die. Hey, didn't you say that Yan Zhuixing already knows that Yu Qianqiu is Niu Yud? If you want to find Yu Qianqiu, why don't you go directly to the demon ghost domain?" Wen Lanfeng smiled bitterly and said, "I came from the demon ghost domain. That guy has left the demon ghost domain for a long time and hasn't returned. I found out from Madame Mu's mouth that only you know where he went." Nongzhu was stunned and said, "Nonsense. That guy comes and goes like a ghost. How can I know where he went?" Furong and Zi looked at each other and made a wish in their hearts not to find Yu Qianqiu. Wen Lanfeng's thin face twitched and he said painfully, "Nongzhu, I know you're worried about Yu Qianqiu's safety. Don't worry. I won't let anything happen to Yu Qianqiu even if I have to die." "You're already half a step into the coffin, and you're still talking nonsense. Do you think I'm what you think I am?" Nongzhu rolled her eyes and frowned. She thought, "It's strange. What's wrong with Miss Mu? Why did she say that I know where Yu Qianqiu is? No, I have to go and ask her." As soon as she turned around, she looked back at Wen Lanfeng and asked worriedly, "You can still lose your temper. You won't die so early, will you?" Wen Lanfeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "You'd better help me find Yu Qianqiu. I can hold on for at least 10 more days. I won't die for the time being." Nongzhu shook her head and said, "Since you can't solve this blood devil palm with your cultivation, I can't do anything about it. It seems that I have to settle the matter in Lingfang Valley first, and then let great miracle Dr. Lu do it herself." After that, she went to the backyard. On Shuntian Island in the Demon region, Miss Mu, who had been waiting by the communication array, was speechless when she received Nongzhu's message. After contacting her, Miss Mu took out the small silver ball that Yu Qianqiu had given her, Lust City in the Eastern Holy Land. Yu Qianqiu had been bored to death during this period of time. Every day, he would walk the streets with a few people to spend money or go to the fence to watch bloody fights. Almost every day, he would go to the underground palace under the garden of the city lord's mansion to ask Huang Tian about the purple flame. In the end, he decided to be brazen and simply sat in Huang Tian's clothing shop. Huang Tian's hair was about to explode from his urging. He had never seen such a clingy fellow. In the end, Huang Tian was convinced by this master. He might as well chat with him. Otherwise, his scalp would go numb because of his nagging. This was to Yu Qianzhou's liking. He was quite interested in the matters of the Eastern Holy Land and the immortal world. On this day, the two of them sat together in the ready-made clothing shop again. 2 chairs were facing each other, and a small table was placed in the middle. Just as they were chatting happily, the takeaway from Heavenly Fragrance Restaurant arrived, so the small table was filled with food, and the one who paid was Huang Tian. Yu Qianzhou grabbed a bird wing and took a bite of the meat. His eyes lit up as he chewed, and he asked, "Immortal monarch dancing Ji is a great beauty? Are her breasts big? Are her buttocks perky? How about her figure?" Chapter 770. Speaking of Huang Tian eating bird wings, he was really good at it. Maybe he practiced it out of boredom, but it made Yu Qianzhou exclaim in amazement. He stuffed a whole bird wing into his mouth, chewed for a while, and immediately separated the bone and flesh. The meat went into his stomach, and what came out was a clean bone without any shred of meat. Huang Tiangang had just swallowed a bird wing into his mouth to chew when he suddenly heard Yu Qianzhou ask such a question. His eyes immediately bulged out and the entire bird wing accidentally slipped into his throat. Under the discomfort, he spat it all out and touched his neck while coughing. Yu Qianzhou was completely dumbfounded with a face full of yellow and white meat. He wiped away the minced meat on his eyebrows and slowly removed the bone from his braids. Then, he looked at the food and wine on the table that were contaminated. His face immediately darkened, and he said in a deep voice, "Old man Huang Tian, what do you mean? You and I are in a cooperative relationship. Don't think that you can insult people just because your cultivation is high. I won't fall for it." After coughing for a while, Huang Tian waved his hand and hissed, "Be careful with your words. Be careful of the eavesdroppers. How can you talk nonsense about immortal monarch?" Yu Qianzhou didn't say anything else. He went to the shelf in the shop and found a good piece of cloth. He tore off a piece of cloth and wiped his face. His braids swayed wildly as he shook off the meat dregs on his hair. When he was almost done, he tore off another piece of cloth to wipe the grease on his hands. As he wiped, he snorted, "You said that Ji Wu is a beauty. In my eyes, those without breasts and buttocks aren't considered beauties. Can't I ask? With your little guts, you want to sneak out of the heaven and earth formation? My little ancestor, be careful with your words. Be careful with your words." Huang Tian stood up and walked over quickly. With a worried expression, he advised him to stop. His action was almost like he wanted to stuff the cloth in Yu Qianzhou's hand into his mouth. "Chi!" Yu Qianzhou sneered and casually tossed the cloth on the ground. He looked at the dishes on the small table and waved his hand, saying, "My elegant mood has been completely defeated by you. I'll be leaving first. Hurry up and find out more about that matter." With that said, he walked out with his hands behind his back. Huang Tian was speechless as he looked at the 2 pieces of cloth on the ground. During this time, he had learned his lesson. Although his cultivation was much higher than his, and in the eyes of ordinary people, he would be frightened to the point of trembling with fear. However, this guy completely ignored these things and pestered him every day, making it seem as if he owed him a lot of money. Not only did he choose the best food and drinks every day, he brought a group of natives to of Huang Tian of the city. Huang Tian suddenly of Huang of the Tian. Huang of all, I'll endure. As long as I leave the heaven and earth formation, I'll kill this brat. Huang Tian thought. How could Yu Qianzhou not know what Huang Tian was planning by swallowing his anger? However, he didn't point it out. Since it was like this, he wouldn't be polite. He was now staying in the best inn and eating the best restaurant with Boli and the others. In any case, he didn't have to pay for it himself. As long as Yellow Sand City had it and felt that Utopia needed it, he would put the bill on Huang Tian's head and send the items back to Utopia. Yu Qianzhou felt that he was a man who cared about his family. After a period of time, Boli and the others lived comfortably. They were so happy that they forgot about home and home. No one mentioned when they would return to the cannibals' tribe. The entire Yellow Sand City, Take what you should take, eat what you should eat. Everything was free. Following Yu Qianqiu every day, eating and drinking well, that was great. Swaying out of the boutique, he frowned slightly and quickened his pace. He quickly returned to his inn, closed the door, and disappeared from the house. As soon as he returned to Obedient Island, he saw Lady Mu waiting for him. Yu Qianqiu looked around and did not find anything unusual. He asked suspiciously, "Lady Mu, did something happen?" Lady Mu stared dumbfoundedly at Yu Qianqiu's cool hairstyle and bronze-colored skin. After a long while, she told her in detail how when Lanfeng came to find her, how she sent him to the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea, and how she received Nongzhu's inquiry. When Lanfeng is injured? With his cultivation, who else in the cultivation world can hurt him? Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a moment. Then he said with slight surprise, "Did something happen in Lingfang Valley?" His first reaction was almost the same as Nongzhu's. "You look after the house. I will go to the South Sea purple bamboo forest," Yu Qianqiu casually said and immediately disappeared. In the bamboo Lang paradise, Nongzhu flashed back from the backyard with a gloomy face. Hibiscus and Zi looked at each other in confusion. When Lanfeng could not wait to ask, "Nongzhu, how is it? Is there any news about Yu Qianqiu?" With a gloomy face, Nongzhu said in a low voice, "Now I really suspect that Old Bai has entrusted the demon ghost domain to the wrong person. I don't know where that bastard has gone. He has left the demon ghost domain for a long time and has never come back. He is really relaxed." The meaning of this sentence was obvious. It meant that there was no news about Yu Qianqiu. Zi and Hibiscus were slightly relieved. This was what they hoped for. As for whether the demon region was entrusted to the wrong person, the two women had no idea. Shuntian Island really needs some bamboo to set off my image. Humble bamboo has leaves that lower its head, but proud plum has no flowers that raise its head. TSK, TSK. It is a perfect match for me. I also need to transplant some plum blossoms from the ghost manor. This kind of incongruous style of swearing mixed with politeness made them look at each other. It would be strange if they did not know who it was. The four of them almost said in unison, "Yu Qianqiu." They saw Yu Qianqiu swaying out of the bamboo forest path with his hands behind his back. He probably did not know how shocking his dazzling appearance was. In short, they were all dumbfounded. The small braids on his head were very eye-catching. In addition to his bronze skin, it was almost impossible to recognize him. This was still good. No matter what, he was wearing clothes. If he was wearing skimpy clothes made of cannibals, he would have shocked everyone. Hibiscus looked at her man in surprise. Ziyi's eyes were sparkling with curiosity. She flashed over and grabbed the small braids on Yu Qianqiu's head. She said in surprise, "Yu Qianqiu, how did you mess your hair like this? It's so ugly." "Go." Yu Qianqiu pushed her hand away and snorted. "Men and women should not touch each other. You are not allowed to touch me without my permission." Ziyi had already trained her face to be thick. She pretended not to hear him and stared at his head. The two of them walked into the blessed land of bamboo. Hibiscus came over excitedly. Yu Qianqiu pulled her hand and smiled. "Are you used to this place? No one bullied you, right?" Hibiscus nodded and shook her head. In short, she was very happy. Nongzhu stared at Yu Qianqiu's braids for a long time. She asked dully, "Where did you go? How did you end up like this?" Yu Qianqiu slowly let go of Hibiscus's hand. His face was a bit sinister. He squinted at Wen Lanfeng and said in a deep voice, "It seems that Senior Wen's injury is not light. I heard that Senior Wen is looking for me everywhere. What can I do for you?" Wen Lanfeng was also shocked by his hairstyle. He did not know what he was playing at. At this time, he came back to his senses and hurriedly said, "Yu Qianqiu, quickly follow me to Lingfang Valley. We can talk on the way." "No hurry. It's not too late to go after we figure things out," Yu Qianqiu said calmly. It was not good to force him. When Lanfeng immediately told him what had happened. As a result, Yu Qianqiu laughed coldly. After listening to it, he sneered and said, "It's really 3 days without a beating to tear the tiles off the roof. You jump quite high. You dog. It's good enough that I didn't look for you. But you took the initiative to look for me. Good. You've grown up. Chapter 771. The gloominess in his tone was so strong that it made people feel that he was suppressing his desire for revenge. However, this atmosphere was destroyed by Ziyi's words. What do you mean by 3 days without a beating? Ziyi asked curiously. Yu Qianqiu's expression froze, and he rolled his eyes and ignored it directly. When Lanfeng was delighted by his words and said hurriedly, "In that case, let's not delay and go to Lingfang Valley quickly." Nongzhu frowned and said, "Yu Qianqiu, don't be careless. Yan Zhuixing is not the same as before. You just need to show your face and calm him down first. Leave the action to me." Yu Qianqiu pondered for a moment, then waved his hand noncommittally and said, "You go first. I'll be there later." When Lanfeng and Nongzhu were stunned at the same time, and the former said anxiously, "Let's go together. If Yan Zhuixing sees that I don't take you back with me, Lu Yanqing and the others will be in danger." It would have been better if she didn't say that, but it immediately made Yu Qianqiu furious. He stared at Wen Lanfeng with a fake smile and snorted coldly. "It's my fault for being blind and overestimating the 4 great men of the cultivation world. They are really extraordinary. The 10 pots of blood orchid that I gave you, you gave them to Yan Zhuixing to make him arrogant. The 2 people I entrusted to you to take care of, you also sent them to Yan Zhuixing as hostages. I asked for it. You have taken a fancy to me, so I can't not go. If you have the ability to control me, use it on Yan Zhuixing." When Lanfeng was ashamed and embarrassed by his sarcasm, Nongzhu immediately frowned and shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, it has happened. Why are you still talking nonsense? Let's go together, so as to avoid unnecessary trouble." Yu Qianqiu sucked in a deep breath. After slightly calming down the rage that filled his belly, he said coolly, "That bastard underestimated me too much to actually play hostage threat with your father. Heh. I found the wrong opponent, but I've fought with that kid before, and that guy's blood escape is indeed strange. Since he dared to bully me today, if I don't kill him, I'll be making things difficult for myself. Besides, I have other important things to do. I don't have that much time to play house with him. You guys go first, I'll go find a helper. In short, I won't let him escape again this time. Don't look at me, you guys go first, I'll take a shortcut and arrive before you." The 2 of them were speechless. Such a thorny matter, and this fellow actually said it was a child's play. Wasn't his tone a little too arrogant? What they didn't know was that Yu Qianqiu's current level of play was no longer the same as before. Before he came here, he was still sitting with a great immortal stage immortal, eating, drinking, and bragging. Now, he really didn't have any interest in soul formation stage fights. Ziyi's eyes flashed with a trace of admiration when she heard him speak so confidently. She thought, as expected of Elder Bai's disciple. Shortcut. When Lanfeng's expression twitched, he subconsciously looked up at the surrounding sky. Could it be that the route of flying in the air was not a straight line distance, but a closer distance than a straight line? Nongzhu, on the other hand, was lost in thought. She knew that Yu Qianqiu had a secret method to escape, but she was confused about the helper that Yu Qianqiu mentioned. Who was the helper that Yu Qianqiu mentioned? She pulled Wen Lanfeng and said, "Let's go. He won't be later than us." This? Wen Lanfeng still didn't believe it. Ziyi said excitedly, "Master, I want to go too." As a result, Nongzhu glared at them and reprimanded, "You 2 girls stay here obediently. You are not allowed to break out of the array before I come back, or I won't forgive you." After that, he ignored Ziyi's aggrieved face and shouted to Wen Lanfeng, "Don't dawdle, let's go." The latter had no choice but to follow Nongzhu to the sky, flying quickly in the direction of Lingfang Valley. "Are you leaving again? Is it dangerous?" Farong asked worriedly. Yu Qianqiu, who was lost in thought, turned around and said with a faint smile, "A clown is not worth mentioning. It's a piece of cake to deal with him. There is no danger. It's all my fault. My cultivation is too low to help you." Farong lowered her head and softly blamed herself. Yu Qianqiu smiled and shook his head. He reached out to touch her face and pointed at his chest where his heart was. He said softly, "You are wrong. In fact, you have helped me a lot. Here." The two of them forgot about each other and hugged each other. Yu Qianqiu smelled her body fragrance that could soothe one's nerves. He put his mouth next to her ear and gently said, "Listen to Senior Nongzhu. Before he returns, don't leave the island's great formation. Can you do it?" Hibiscus said, "Yes." Zi was left out. She pouted, but there was an unconcealable envy in her eyes. The two of them hugged and enjoyed each other for a while. Yu Qianqiu then pushed Furong away and touched her face again. He smiled and said, "I'm leaving." After that, he disappeared into the depths of the purple bamboo forest. Furong watched as Yu Qianqiu left. She took out a restriction-breaking pill and walked towards a bamboo building with a determined look in her eyes. Zi was dispirited. She said weakly, "Furong, are you going to become a zombie again?" She looked around the deserted purple bamboo forest and helplessly went back to her cultivation. Yu Qianqiu returned to his room in the inn and immediately knocked on the door opposite. Immortal Lord Crocodile's indifferent voice said, "The door is open." Yu Qianqiu opened the door and took the initiative to close it. Immortal Lord Crocodile, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, glanced at him and frowned. "What's the matter? There's something I need your help with." Yu Qianqiu sat down next to him and looked at him. Immortal Lord Crocodile asked curiously, "Is there anything in Lust Soil City that Yellow Sky can't help you with?" Yu Qianqiu smiled and transmitted his voice. "I want to go out of the Eastern Holy Land to kill someone. Please help me hold the fort." "What do you mean? Speak clearly." Immortal Lord Crocodile was confused. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and transmitted his voice coldly. "I just received news that my woman was kidnapped by an old enemy. It's not that I'm afraid of that guy, but that guy's cultivation technique is very strange. The last time we fought, it looked like he was going to die. But who knew that he would use some blood escape and disappear without a trace? This time, I'm asking for your help mainly to block him at the critical moment. Don't let him escape again." "Blood escape?" Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned at first. Then, he said in surprise, "You mean the blood escape of the Devil God?" "Devil God?" Yu Qianqiu stared blankly for a moment before saying, "I don't know if he's of the same bloodline as the Demon God, but that guy took out his severed arm and exploded it into a bloody mist. He shouted, 'Blood escape,' before disappearing." Immortal Lord Crocodile said solemnly, "If that's the case, it should be the Devil God's blood escape. Although I haven't seen it before, I heard from Immortal Emperor Jintai that this technique is very harmful to the user. Every time it is used, one's cultivation will drop by 1 level. Usually, the person won't use the blood escape unless they have no other choice. The higher the cultivation, the more cautious they will be. However, once it is used, no one can stop him from escaping. Unless the person's cultivation is not high enough, they won't be able to escape far even if they use the blood escape. Only then can they be caught. Otherwise, no one in the 3 realms can stop him. Not even the Immortal Emperor or the Emperor of the Underworld." Yu Qianqiu was shocked. "So powerful? Then I can't kill him?" "That's not the case. You can just kill him before he uses the blood escape." Immortal Lord Crocodile replied disapprovingly. Then he said in disbelief, "I just find it strange. Why would anyone in the mortal world cultivate the demonic arts of the fiend celestial lineage? Logically, it shouldn't be. I would believe it if other demonic techniques were left in the mortal world. But the Devil God's demonic techniques are the cultivation techniques of generations of Devil Lords in the Devil world. How could it be left in the mortal world?" Yu Qianqiu remembered what Immortal Lord Crocodile said about killing him before using the blood escape. Then, he asked curiously, "Old monster, what does the so-called Devil God mean?" Immortal Crocodile organized his thoughts and explained. Legend has it that the fiendish cultivators who wreaked havoc in the 3 realms had no common master. Although the Fiend Celestial had the support of the entire fiendish Tao, he had no desire to dominate the fiendish Tao. He was a peerless expert who only knew how to continuously pursue the peak of cultivation. Before he ascended to the divine realm, he personally recorded a peerless cultivation technique for his descendants. It was called the Demonic Book. Those who inherited and cultivated the Demonic Book were the descendants of the Devil God. They were known as the Devil God. Other demonic cultivators should not have had the chance to cultivate the Demonic Book. Although the Devil God himself had no desire to rule over the Devil Path, his descendants did not. After the descendants of the Devil God cultivated the Demonic Book, they used the magic of the Demonic Book to unify the Devil Path and become the Devil Lord of the Devil World. However, this Devil Lord was too ambitious. He wanted to unify the three realms outside of the Devil World, so he led the demonic cultivators to suppress the other three realms. The immortal realm and the netherworld fought against him and paid a heavy price. However, the Devil World without the Devil God was not that scary. After countless years of fighting, 2 Devil Lords of the Devil World had fallen. When the third Devil Lord succeeded the throne, the war in the three realms expanded, and the mortal world was implicated. Not long after, for some reason, the ruler of the immortal realm suddenly became Jin Tai, and the ruler of the netherworld suddenly became Bai Qi, who is now the immortal emperor and the emperor of the underworld. It was also under the hands of these three that the war between the three realms finally ended. Jin Tai and Bai Qi worked together to seal the Devil World. After that, the immortal realm and the netherworld realm began to clean up the remnants of the Devil World in the other realms. Yu Qianqiu paused. You mean that only the Devil Lords of the Devil World had the chance to cultivate the Devil God's Demonic Book? And the blood escape is a cultivation technique in the Demonic Book? That's right. Immortal Crocodile nodded. That's why I find it strange. Why would anyone in the mortal world cultivate the blood escape? The strangest thing is that those who cultivate the Demonic Book must have the help of an inheritor to form a demonic body. Otherwise, they would not be able to cultivate the cultivation technique of the Devil God. Unless... Chapter 772. Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and asked, "Unless what? It's just a legend. I don't know if it's true or not." Immortal Crocodile seemed to have recalled a distant memory and said slowly, "It's said that the techniques in the Demonic Book are too heaven-defying, and the requirements for cultivation talent are also extremely high. Not everyone is qualified to cultivate all of the techniques, not even the descendants of the demon god. Rumor has it that the most talented demon lords in the past only managed to cultivate 2/3 of the techniques, and the further they go, the more powerful the techniques are. However, this demonic book has been cursed by the demon god with the demon god great technique, and the latter parts of the heaven-defying techniques cannot be peaked at unless one cultivates the demonic book. In other words, if one wants to cultivate the later parts of the heaven-defying techniques, the cultivator of the demonic book must gradually break through the layers of restrictions according to the progress of his cultivation, or else he will be devoured by the demonic book. This should also be a way for the demon god to protect his descendants. It's said that the method used by the demon lords to cultivate the demonic book is not authentic, and the real way to cultivate the demonic book is to choose a person to cultivate according to one of the techniques in the demonic book. However, this technique is too cruel, and those who go through the test almost die. It's difficult to find a suitable successor to cultivate the demonic book out of 100,000 cultivators. The demon lords of the past naturally did not dare to take this risk, and only managed to cultivate the demonic book with the help of the previous demon lord. Because of this, none of the demon lords in the past were able to cultivate the entire demonic book. And those who can withstand the test of the technique are the most qualified to cultivate the demonic book, be it in terms of physical or mental toughness. There's another saying, I don't know if it's a rumor, but it's probably not groundless. It's said that the son of the demon god, the first demon lord, said this. He said that those who can withstand the test of the technique will be favored by the demon god of the realm of the gods, and will be regarded as the true successor to the demonic book. In times of crisis, they will be protected by the demon god, and their cultivation speed will be twice as fast as ordinary people. Yu Qianqiu seemed to be listening to a fairy tale and said with some doubt, "According to what you said, Yan Zhuixing will not have the chance to obtain the help of the third demon lord to cultivate the demonic book He was still sealed in the devil realm. And you also said that those who cultivate the demonic book must forge a demonic body. You can't possibly be telling me that Yan Juexing, that fellow, had passed the test of the great law and obtained the favor of the demon god, right? Damn it, old monster, can you not scare me? The strongest person in the 3 realms back then, the successor of the fiend god. I'm just saying, don't take it to heart. Maybe that Xing you mentioned only cultivated a magic art similar to the blood escape, and the demonic codex could not have been passed down to the human world. The key is that even if you want to cultivate the demonic codex, the previous generations of demon kings were not willing to teach it to outsiders. Otherwise, it would shake the fiend celestial lineage's dominance in the fiend world. Think about it, is that even possible? Immortal Lord Crocodile laughed. Yu Qianqiu thought about it and agreed, but he could not help but ask, have you heard of any of the previous demon kings who cultivated the little devil fist? Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned and said doubtfully, the little devil fist seems to be the primary cultivation technique in the demonic book. I heard that it progresses to the little devil fist, great devil fist, and sky devil fist. The previous demon kings could only use the sky devil fist, and it is said that there is a higher level which is the demon god fist used by the demon god. Yu Qianqiu, how do you know about the little devil fist? Did you hear it from someone, or that Xing really knows the little devil fist? Yu Qianqiu scratched his face with a dazed expression, and instead of answering, he asked, have you heard of the demon eye? Immortal Lord Crocodile's face twitched, and he said awkwardly, all the previous demon kings have cultivated the demon eye. It is said that the demon eye has an evil art called demon eye ecstasy, which can control people. You can't be saying that that person knows these 2 demonic arts, right? Yu Qianqiu was a little stupefied. There was no need to ask any further. He didn't know what kind of dog's hit luck that bastard had, but he was actually cultivating the demonic book. Just the name alone was enough to tell that it was amazing. Hee, don't worry, so what if he is cultivating the demonic book? Aren't you going to teach him a lesson? She could kill him before his demonic cultivation was complete, and there would be nothing left to do. If there is no other way, I will do it myself. I can't let a scourge like him live, Immortal Lord Crocodile said kindly. Yu Qianqiu was a little depressed. There was something he had to say, and he finally could not help but ask, old monster, it is impossible for him to forge a demonic body and cultivate the demonic book, because the demon king who can help him is still sealed in the demonic world. Could it be that he really passed some bullsh** t-test and became the true successor of the demonic book that was favored by the demon god? My luck can't be that bad, right? How could I step on such smelly shit? Hee, how is that possible? Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head and laughed. Rumor has it that the successor who is favored by the demon god will be protected by the demon god. Under normal circumstances, it is very difficult to kill him. Difficult to kill? Yu Qianqiu's face turned green. He immediately thought of the battle with Yan Juexing in Lingfang Valley. That guy had been hit by his absorbing stars technique. He was clearly dead, but in the end he came back to life. He had never been able to figure it out, but he did not expect to find the answer today. Could that bastard really be the successor of the demon god? What's wrong with you? Immortal Lord Crocodile asked suspiciously. Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses. He decided not to tell the old monster about the terrifying answer, lest it scared him. Anyone would be afraid of going against the demon god. Suddenly, a ridiculous thought flashed through his mind. Back when Master Bai Changchun was on Obedient Island, he had said that his goal was to fight the demon god. With the old man's abnormal progress, that day might really come, although the chances were slim. Immortal Lord Crocodile asked again, "What's wrong with you? Are you scared out of your wits?" Yu Qianqiu stared at Immortal Lord Crocodile and thought, so what if Yan Juexing is really the successor of the demon god? Since Master has the courage to challenge the demon god, then each generation should be stronger than the previous one. Don't tell me that, as a disciple, I don't have the courage to defeat the demon god's successor? Moreover, the other party had already been defeated by me, so what's there to be afraid of? Master, work harder and fight against the demon god. Leave the little one to me. Yu Qianqiu jumped off the bed and said disdainfully, "Scared out of your wits? Bullsh asterisk T. Let's go and deal with him now." Immortal Lord Crocodile also jumped off the bed and laughed. "Okay, I'll go and broaden my horizons. I'll see how powerful the legendary demonic book is." Yu Qianqiu pretended to throw a few silver balls. When Immortal Lord Crocodile closed his eyes, the two disappeared from the house. In a call not far from the center of Lingfang Valley, which was also the location where Yu Qianqiu had started tracking Xian Laosan, the two suddenly appeared. After being pushed by Yu Qianqiu, Immortal Lord Crocodile opened his eyes and looked around. He was about to ask something, but Yu Qianqiu made a shushing gesture and sent a voice transmission. Using voice transmission, "We're not far from the target. Be careful not to be heard." Immortal Lord Crocodile asked curiously, "Aren't you going to kill him? Are you afraid of being heard? Are you going to ambush him?" What a joke. Ambush is needed to deal with him. Yu Qianqiu curled his lips and said, "This is called being cautious. It's not too late to make a move after figuring out the situation. That guy is not easy to deal with. Let's go. Let's observe first." Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled and did not say anything. He found this guy interesting, so he followed Yu Qianqiu out of the call. Yu Qianqiu looked around, and his eyes fell on a small hill where he could see the entire landscape of Lingfang Valley. He pointed at his feet, and a hole quickly appeared in the ground. He gestured to Immortal Lord Crocodile to follow him and walk down. Earth manipulation? Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at the hole under his feet and was speechless. He could control fire and earth. What other magical abilities did this guy have? He silently followed him into the hole. The hole behind him closed silently, and the passage in front of him continued to expand. Not long after, there was a flash of light in front of them. Two small openings the size of a head appeared. Yu Qianqiu stood in front of one of the openings and watched silently. Immortal Lord Crocodile curiously walked to the other opening and saw that it was covered by short grass. It was easy for people inside to see through the gaps in the grass, but it was difficult for people outside to see these two openings. It was really a good place to observe. This guy was really talented. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked back and was stunned again. He saw that a chair made of soil had appeared under Yu Qianqiu's butt. The height was very suitable, and he was leisurely and indifferently looking outside. "Hey!" Immortal Lord Crocodile poked Yu Qianqiu and pointed under his butt. "You can't be too selfish. Don't just care about yourself." Yu Qianqiu did not say anything. With a wave of his hand, a chair made of soil immediately rose from the ground for Immortal Lord Crocodile to sit on. At this time, the group of people in Lingfang Valley would never have thought that there were two people sitting under the almost bare hill opposite them, staring at them. On the roof of the abode, Ninth Xian was standing vigilantly and observing the surroundings. Below, Yan Zhuixing was sitting on a table with his eyes closed confidently. Behind him were 8th Xian, Yenyu, and the Allure Beauty. Lu Yanqing sat on a bench, silently biting her lips as she stared at Yan Zhuixing opposite her. After seeing the distribution of people in the abode clearly, Yu Qianqiu transmitted his voice. "Old monster, the guy sitting on the table is my target. How dare he act like a hooligan in front of me? Damn it! I want to deal with him personally." The two women behind him are already controlled by the demon eye. They are the people I want to save. As for the others, it doesn't matter. I will save them if I can, but it doesn't matter if I can't. When you receive my signal, you must do your best to save the two women. Be careful, they are already controlled by the demon eye. They may resist or harm themselves. You must subdue them in one fell swoop. Don't let me have any worries. Hee. Don't worry. Leave the two women to me. I won't let you have any worries. I want to see what you have to deal with that soul formation brat. Immortal Lord Crocodile's words sounded like he was watching a show. He was stunned. Those two women are your women? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.